Chapter 399. Bloodbat. Zhou Xuanji asked in astonishment. He had already become a first-class great emperor. Who else in the mortal world could kill him? He immediately thought of the demonic emperor and Xiao Hongjun. Xian Xianghua sighed and said, "That's right. Blood-colored bat. Initially, I thought I was too worried about you, which was why I had a dream. But later on, the dream became more realistic. With our cultivation, how can we dream so easily? Great tribulation scattered immortals cultivated day and night. How could they have time to sleep?" Zhou Xuanji comforted her. "Don't overthink. I'm no longer the same as before. Do you still think I'm weak?" Xian Xianghua thought about it and realized that it was true. Many people said that this brat would surely die, but he did not. Moreover, he knew the celestial devil rebirth technique. He could be reborn after death. She smiled proudly. "Of course, with my celestial devil rebirth technique." Zhou Xuanji curled his lip and said, "It's because I'm powerful. Or else, how could I master the celestial devil rebirth technique so quickly?" The two began to bicker. Next, Emperor Sword Court began to reorganize itself. Zhou Xuanji gathered all the disciples and brainwashed them. All the disciples worked hard on their sword techniques, as though they were injected with chicken blood. The other factions in the northern wilderness region also began to rebuild and recuperate. Zhou Xuanji's legend was still being spread. He was quickly deified. After Yang Di's departure, no one in the world could be compared to him. The Sword Emperor ruled the world. The era of the Sword's Way had arrived. Overseas, boom! A mountain on an island was split in half. Daoseeker fell into the rubble and was in a sorry state. Dust flew up, and his face was covered in blood. He looked up. A red-haired lady in a white dress levitated in the air with a mocking smile. "Who are you?" Daoseeker asked with gritted teeth. His heart was filled with shock. He was a tribulation executive. Mortals could not hurt him at all. How could this lady? "Remember, my name is Xiao Hongjun. From today onwards, you will serve me, tribulation executive." The red-haired lady smiled arrogantly. Although she was beautiful, she gave off a terrifying vibe. Xiao Hongjun. Daoseeker's pupils contracted. He swallowed his saliva and got up with much difficulty. "Why did you come to the northern wilderness region? Was it the Heavenly Hall's will?" Xiao Hongjun heard him and laughed disdainfully. "Heavenly Hall is nothing. When I broke into the Heavenly Hall back then, who could stop me other than Seiji Tian?" Qiu Dao was not surprised. Instead, he became even more terrified. In other words, the Heavenly Palace was not the only enemy of the northern wilderness region. Xiao Hongjun stared at Daoseeker and asked, "Do you know where the tomb of great Emperor Wuwang is?" "Emperor Wuwang." Daoseeker frowned. He instantly thought of many things. At this moment, an invisible force lifted him up and brought him before Xiao Hongjun. "Tell me the truth or I will kill you," Xiao Hongjun threatened. Countless bloodbats emerged from her back and surrounded Qiu Dao. Daoseeker sighed and asked, "Great Emperor Wuwang has been dead for 110,000 years. Where can we find his tomb? Even if there is one, it would have been dug out long ago." Xiao Hongjun frowned, and a murderous aura appeared between her brows. Where did that Zhou Xuanji come from? She changed the topic and asked. She had observed the battle at Juadi Cliff through her spell when she was overseas, and it left a deep impression on her. Such a prodigy should not exist in the mortal world. She suspected that Zhou Xuanji had obtained great Emperor Wuwang's legacy, or else how could he be so powerful? Moreover, she knew that the current northern wilderness humans could not become great emperors. Daoseeker's heart trembled. He did not want anything to happen to Zhou Xuanji, but facing Xiao Hongjun's powerful might, he could not resist. Zhou Xuanji has no background. His fate was changed when he was young, so it's impossible to predict his fate. Daoseeker replied, hoping to dispel Xiao Hongjun's thoughts about Zhou Xuanji. Xiao Hongjun narrowed her eyes and laughed coldly. "I will give you time. You must find great Emperor Wuwang's tomb. Also, the Heavenly Hall's genius Ji Xian has already reincarnated. His name is Su Han, and he's at the coastal area in the east of the northern wilderness region. Draw him over to your side. After that, bring him to me with information about him and great Emperor Wuwang's tomb. Within 3 years, if you can't do it, I will kill you. Not only you, but I will slaughter the entire northern wilderness human race. After that, the human ancestors will probably thank me. You should understand. Daoseeker was covered in cold sweat, and could only agree. He was extremely afraid of Xiao Hongjun. It was his first time encountering someone who could hurt him. Tribulation executives did not have physical bodies in the northern wilderness region, and ordinary objects could not invade them. But when Xiao Hongjun attacked him, she could solidify his physical body. He shuddered at the thought of it. After that, Daoseeker left pathetically. Xiao Hongjun stood among the swarm of blood bats, and began thinking. The demonic emperor's son. The violet demon monarch's heart, Ji Xian. Interesting. I did not expect three matchless fates to gather in the same mortal realm, and in the same era. She mumbled to herself with a smile that was bewitchingly beautiful. The heavenly hall. Sage Yutian sat on the throne with a deep frown. Everyone below him was silent. The atmosphere was oppressive, and the legs of those standing at the back were trembling. Some of them could not bear the pressure. When Sage Yutian was enraged, a powerful aura would wreak havoc. Those with weak cultivation could not bear it. Your Majesty, Xianyuan Shinhao is the top genius of the heavenly hall. He will not fail. A muscular man stood up and said. He was the clan leader of the Xianyuan clan, Xianyuan Zhengzun. His face was solemn, but his heart was filled with guilt. If Xianyuan Shinhao really failed in the mortal realm, it would be a great humiliation. This brat was so confident just now. What if he really fails? Sage Yutian asked with squinted eyes. He had invested too many resources and expectations on Xianyuan Shinhao. He could not allow Xianyuan Shinhao to fail. Xianyuan Zhengzun wanted to say something but hesitated. Eventually, he chose to keep his mouth shut. As a second-class great emperor, he cannot dominate the mortal realm. What a joke. Your Majesty, it seems like you cannot indulge the geniuses of the Xianyuan clan anymore. A white-bearded old man stood up and said. He wore a long white robe, and had an extraordinary demeanor. Xianyuan Zhengzun's face darkened in anger. Sage Yutian snorted coldly, and did not speak anymore. The atmosphere in the palace fell into silence again. Late at night, on the peak of Skyfall, Zhou Xuanji sat by the cliff and cultivated. Even though he had already become a great emperor, he did not slack off. After becoming a great emperor, his cultivation grew tremendously. Compared to before, he progressed at a tremendous pace. However, the amount of spiritual qi required for each stage of heavenly law great emperor was much more than before. Zhou Xuanji, come and meet me. A voice sounded out in Zhou Xuanji's mind, and he opened his eyes in shock. He frowned and scanned with his divine sense. Soon, he locked onto the other party. It was 250 miles away. Under the moonlight, a blue-robed man stood on the cliff and looked up at the bright moon. It was none other than Sage Yutian. He appeared in the mortal realm. Zhou Xuanji appeared behind Sage Yutian and asked with a deep voice, "Who are you?" He could not see through this person. Impossible. He was already invincible in the mortal realm, and was a first-class great emperor. There was only one possibility. This person did not belong to the mortal realm. Sage Yutian turned around and looked at him expressionlessly. I am the lord of the heavenly hall, Sage Yutian. I control a dozen mortal realms and am immortal. Do you know your crime? Baidu read the latest chapter of I Have Countless Legendary Sword Claw Bookhouse for free. Chapter 400. The Master of the Heavenly Palace, Sage Yutian. Zhou Xuanji looked at him calmly and asked, what crime? If Sage Yutian wanted to kill him or could kill him, he would have done so a long time ago. Their eyes met. He was calm and composed, without the slightest fear. Sage Yutian narrowed his eyes and said, You obstructed the will of heaven. Are you not guilty? Zhou Xuanji smiled. I have your mother's sins. He said bluntly. Xianyuan Zhou forced me to become Tian. I was unwilling, so he wanted to kill me. Can't I resist? Your heavenly palace slaughtered the human race. What do you have to say about that? He did not have a good impression of the Sky Palace. He even wanted to start a war. However, considering that the northern wilderness region was still recovering and could not afford to fight a war, he could only suppress his anger for now. Sage Yutian shook his head and said, If it wasn't for me, the northern wilderness humans would have been wiped out long ago. This time, I couldn't protect them, so I sent the Xianyuan clan to wipe them out. You've already become a great emperor, so you can escape this calamity and enter the heavenly hall. I'll nurture you. What do you think? Zhou Xuanji frowned. This turn of events made him fall into silence. No wonder the ancestors of the human clan wanted to exterminate the human clan of the northern wilderness so much, but they did not do so. So it was because the heavenly palace was resisting? He did not feel grateful because the heavenly palace had already massacred 2 great empires. Next, they were going to massacre the entire human race. Emperor Sword Court would also encounter a calamity. If I agree, can you protect the northern wilderness region? Zhou Xuanji asked. He did not want to join the heavenly hall, and was just testing the waters. Sage Yutian waved his hand domineeringly and said, "No, apart from you, everyone else must die." He didn't lie, because he was the master of the heavenly palace, and he needed his subordinates to obey him. Zhou Xuanji smiled. People of different paths cannot make plans together. Sage Yutian didn't get angry. His gaze was calm as he stared at him and said, "If you aren't willing to enter Heavenly Hall and ascend, you will die. It isn't that I want to kill you, but there are too many experts pressuring me from behind. Marquis should have already told you the truth." This guy actually knew about the Marquis. Zhou Xuanji suddenly felt pressured. Could it be that those ancestors were watching him from the upper realm? Sage Yutian saw through his thoughts and said, "That's not the case. I can't enter the mortal world, and can't pry into it unless my cultivation surpasses that of a true deity." True God? Was it his status or his realm? Zhou Xuanji had heard of this term before, but he did not have the chance to know the answer. He did not ask. Instead, he was thinking about how many almighties wanted the northern wilderness humans dead. Very soon, an army from the upper realms will descend. The heavenly palace will not be merciful. You will regret it. Although you have become a great emperor, you are still too young. After saying this, Sage Yutian left. He admired Zhou Xuanji's talent, which was why he came down to recruit him. Since they couldn't come to an agreement, then so be it. Zhou Xuanji looked at the bright moon, and did not immediately return to Skyfall. He thought for a long time. In the end he sighed. It's still not enough. In the blink of an eye, half a year had passed since Spirit Sovereign Yan's death. The northern wilderness region had recovered quite a bit, and the number of war-torn areas within the human race had been greatly reduced. However, because the southern Han royal city and the Great Shang Empire had been destroyed, they had become places where bandits roamed. On this day, Zhou Xuanji was teaching Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Zongjian, Lin Changge, Chen Bantian, Ning Zifeng, Meng Tianlang and Beishao Wangjian. Everyone sat cross-legged together, exchanging their understanding of the sword Dao. Zhou Xuanji listened most of the time, and gave some pointers occasionally. His pointers were always accurate, and enlightening the others. First-class great emperor, seventh tribulation scattered immortal. His understanding of the sword Dao was far beyond that of Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Zongjian and the others. After their conversation, Zhou Xuanji told them about his encounter with the Heavenly Hall, the demonic emperor, Wang Ho, and Xiao Hongjun. These trusted aides were already the mainstays of Emperor Sword Court, and could rule over a region. Zhou Xuanji was nurturing them to train their courage and knowledge. After he finished speaking, everyone fell into silence. A long while later, Beishao Wangjian asked, "Xiao Jinghong, what's your relationship with Xiao Hongjun? Their names are so similar." Xiao Jinghong was speechless and stared at him. Ning Zifeng muttered, "If so, even if we destroy the Heavenly Hall, it won't be a good thing. We might be faced with a catastrophe. The northern wilderness humans could even destroy the Heavenly Hall. How could those powerhouses be at ease? Yeah, but we're not afraid. Master, don't be afraid. These ancestors are really ungrateful. Forget about the ancestors before Lu Wuji. What's the meaning of the 9 emperors of the Sword's Way? Especially the Hegemon Sword Emperor. He's so disgusting. I will never respect him as an ancestor again." The group began discussing among themselves. Lin Changge was the most indignant one. Zhou Xuanji said, "There will be a lot of trouble in the future. I don't want you to just talk about Emperor Sword Court's purpose. Cultivate well, strengthen Emperor Sword Court, and protect the northern wilderness region. Okay. Of course. Zhao Zongjian patted his chest and said. The others followed suit, each more righteous than the last. Zhou Xuanji was very satisfied. After that, he ordered to continue recruiting disciples. This matter was handled by Xiao Jinghong, Lin Changge and the other elders. The next day, the news of Emperor Sword Court recruiting disciples spread to the human race. After Zhou Xuanji gave the order, he no longer paid attention to it, and began to focus on cultivation. Occasionally he taught Zhou Xiaoxian. Zhou Xiaoxian had already grown up. She was youthful and talented. Her cultivation had already reached inner pellet level 6. Among the second-generation disciples, she was the eldest. The eldest senior brother of the second generation, Su Yang, was her #1 follower. As Zhou Xuanji's daughter, no male disciple in Emperor Sword Court dared to touch her. Not to mention that Zhou Xuanji was not around, Jiang Shui, Huang Lianqin, Xiao Jinghong, and the others were around. Who would dare to court death? Even if they accidentally touched Zhou Xiaoshuan's shoulder, the male disciples would be in fear. Although Zhou Xiaoxian was a young girl, Zhou Xuanji's influence on her was too great. Unless there was a man more powerful than Zhou Xuanji, she would not be moved. She only wanted to become more powerful. Regarding this, Zhou Xuanji suspected that she was influenced by Xian Xianghua. She was too eager to be powerful. Don't be like Long Proud Hua, who was single for 10,000 years. This day, Emperor Sword Court began recruiting disciples. The entire Skyfall was bustling. Zhou Xuanji, come out and fight. I'm Xianyuan Xinhao, the great emperor of the upper realm. If you lose today's battle, return to the heavenly hall with me. A loud cry resounded across the sky, and countless people looked up in shock. Xianyuan Xinhao, who looked like a god of war, appeared in the sky. Millions of people were in an uproar. The great emperor of the upper realm? The heavenly hall came so soon? The sword emperor cannot be defeated. This person is seeking his own death. Bullsh *T great emperor. How come I've never heard of the name Xianyuan Xinhao? Most people snorted disdainfully. After the tribulation of spirit sovereign Yen, Zhou Xuanji was invincible in the eyes of the northern wilderness. Even if the heavenly hall came, they would not be able to defeat the sword emperor. Xianyuan Xinhao stood proudly, but when he heard the discussions below, his mouth twitched, and veins popped on his forehead. He was in an extremely bad mood. A bunch of mortals. If not for the fact that this was Zhou Xuanji's territory, he would not allow these mortals to make noise. Come, wonderful book house. Chapter 401. Xianyuan Xinhao, if you lose, you'll have to become my sword slave. Do you dare? Zhou Xuanji's voice sounded out from Skyfall, and millions of people cheered. With the sword emperor present, whether it was Emperor Sword Court's disciples, or the cultivators who had come to pay their respects, they all felt a sense of security, and did not fear Xianyuan Xinhao. Xianyuan Xinhao was so angry that his expression became dark. He would rather die than become Zhou Xuanji's disciple. He shouted angrily, "Cut the crap and come out!" A malevolent and mighty halberd appeared in his left hand, and an exaggeratedly long blade appeared in his right hand. With a halberd and a blade, his aura erupted, silencing the heavens and earth. Everyone stared at him dumbfounded. What a terrifying pressure! Xianyuan Xinhao controlled himself very well, or else just the might alone would be enough to kill hundreds of thousands of people. He did not do this. After all, he owed Zhou Xuanji his life. At this moment, a figure stepped out from the sea of clouds. It was Zhou Xuanji. He wore black clothes, and his black hair casually scattered down his back. His face was like jade, and his eyebrows were sharp like swords. The corners of his lips curled up slightly, revealing an incomparably confident smile. He didn't fear Xianyuan Xinhao at all. He stared at Xianyuan Xinhao and said with a smile, "Is half a year enough for you to make up for the gap between us?" Xianyuan Xinhao frowned, the anger in his heart rising once more. If they were in the upper realm, even 100 Zhou Xuanjis would not be a match for him. This child was too savage. He immediately raised his divine weapon and walked towards Zhou Xuanji. The millions of people on Skyfall held their breaths and watched nervously. Zhou Xuanji raised his right hand, and the true Lord Xianqing sword appeared in his hand. He stared at Xianyuan Xinhao, his gaze becoming sharp. Father! Defeat him! Zhou Shaoxian stood on the cliff and shouted. Just when she finished speaking, Zhou Xuanji moved suddenly. Xianyuan Xinhao's pupil shrank. What incredible speed! Just as he was about to make a move, a terrifying pressure enveloped him, causing him to be unable to move. What's going on? Emperor's might? Impossible! Xianyuan Xinhao revealed a look of horror. Waves surged in his heart. Puchi! True Lord Xianxing's sword pierced through his throat, and blood flowed out from the back of his neck. Zhou Xuanji stood in front of him with a cold expression. You have lost. Xianyuan Xinhao's eyes widened and beads of cold sweat appeared on his forehead, and his body slightly trembled. All the spectators were stunned. He had thought that it would be a fierce battle. He didn't expect it to be an instant kill. The Sword Emperor was ridiculously strong. Thunderclouds rolled and countless bolts of lightning interweaved. A stone tablet that was thousands of feet tall stood in the middle of the thunderclouds. Many names were engraved on it, and from the bottom to the top, the characters grew larger and larger. The stone tablet shook violently, as if it would shatter at any moment. Two black-robed men stood in front of the stone monument, looking up. A new name will appear on the Great Emperor's stele. I wonder what this person's ranking is. The two of them conversed softly. At the top of the All Heaven's Great Emperor stele, the top 100 names were arranged in a row. The stone tablet suddenly stopped shaking. The 12th name suddenly dropped, causing all the names below it to drop as well. Then a new name appeared in the 12th place. Zhou Xuanji. The two black-robed men were frightened and cried out in alarm. Number 12. First grade Great Sovereign. Even the peerless Hegemon Sword Emperor 10,000 years ago was only number 53. Where did this person come from? The two of them could no longer remain calm. They cast their spells and spread the news. The All Heaven's Great Emperor stele was a manifestation of the heavenly law. It recorded the talent rankings of all living beings. The names on the stele were all great emperors. The top 30 were all first-grade great emperors. Xianyuan Xinhao was ranked 54, just below the Hegemon Sword Emperor. It had been 50,000 years since a first-grade great sovereign was born. On the peak of Skyfall, ever since he defeated Xianyuan Xinhao, Zhou Xuanji forced him to stay to accompany Haotian Sect's Thunder Demon sovereign Zhang Quanglan. On this day, Zhou Xuanji celebrated his 78th birthday while cultivating. Analyzed that the sword owner has reached 78 years old. Gotcha started. Ding! Congratulations, the sword owner obtained Gold Brilliant Soul Sword, God-slaying 9-flame Chimera Demon Sword. He opened his eyes abruptly, and a brilliant light flashed in his eyes. God-slaying Legendary Sword. They were finally out. The information of the two legendary swords appeared before his eyes. Sword name. Brilliant Soul Sword grade. Gold description. A brilliant light that can suppress ghosts. A magnificent sword, a swordsman's favorite. Sword name. 9-flame Chimera Demon Sword grade. God-slaying description. The 9-flame Chimera Demon is an ancient giant demon that contains 9 types of intense flames. It is extremely domineering and invincible. Its soul is transformed into a demon sword, and only great emperors can wield it. Only great emperors can wield it? Zhou Xuanji was delighted. He was now a first-class great emperor. Didn't that mean he could wield it directly? He immediately took out the 9-flame Chimera Demon Sword. In that instant, a fiery light shone on his face, and his pupils dilated. It was a crimson flame longsword. The blade was 4 fingers wide, and there were flame runes carved on its edges. The entire blade was burning with intense flames, and had 3 colors. The bottom was white, the middle was red, and the outside was crimson. The hilt was covered with scales, and holding it, he could feel a cool sensation. Kill! 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 A low roar sounded in Zhou Xuanji's ears, shaking his mind. He immediately stored the sword in the supreme storage. Such a domineering god-slaying legendary sword. Holding this sword, Zhou Xuanji felt an intense desire to destroy, as though everything in the world could not withstand a single blow. Fortunately, with the suppression of the supreme legendary sword system, this desire to destroy would not devour Zhou Xuanji's heart. Very good. With this sword, I will kill as many as the heavenly palace comes. Zhou Xuanji smiled in satisfaction. However, other than the heavenly palace, he had many more enemies. He still had to work hard on his cultivation. At this moment, Liu Demon Wolf's voice came from the foot of the mountain. Master, Great Shang's Emperor Yang Xindi has brought thousands of merchants to pay his respects. Should we accept them? Yang Xindi? Zhou Xuanji replied with squinted eyes. Make the necessary arrangements. Do not be negligent. Yes. After Liu Demon Wolf left, Zhou Xuanji fell into reminiscence. Yang Xindi recognized him before he ruled the world, and the two of them were old friends. It was a pity that Great Shang was already destroyed. He suddenly thought of Great Shang's top beauty Su Xianxian. He wondered how she was doing. He did not feel sad and continued to cultivate. 3 days later he met with Yang Xindi and the others. The collapse of the empire caused Yang Xindi and Yang Zhongtian to become much older. After some discussion, they officially joined Emperor Sword Court. Yang Zhongtian's strategy was unparalleled, and he was famous among the 7 great empires. He was just like Guojia and Jiasu in the 3 kingdoms in his previous life. Daoya old man admired him very much, so he personally made arrangements for him. Yang Xindi was once the son of heaven, and could help Emperor Sword Court develop. However, Emperor Sword Court was a sect of the Way of the Sword. If they did not have outstanding Way of the Sword cultivation, it would be hard for them to convince the masses. Time passed. Half a month passed. Dao Seeker suddenly looked for Zhou Xuanji, and the two of them came to a place where there was no one around to talk. Zhou Xuanji noticed that he did not look well, as though he had just experienced a huge setback. Just as he was about to speak, the man in the woven rush raincoat appeared out of nowhere and spoke first. Something bad has happened. If you want to know what kind of godly swords there are, you can pay attention to it. There will be an update on the godly swords at 6 p.m. More story power rankings and Easter eggs can also be found in the WeChat. Com. Wonderful Bookstore. Com. Chapter 402. Is your business more urgent than mine? Dao Seeker glared at the man in the raincoat and said angrily. He was not surprised at all why the man in the woven rush raincoat was looking for Zhou Xuanji. The man in the woven rush raincoat said angrily. Aren't you just Xiao Hongjuan's matter? I have already informed the Sword Emperor. Dao Seeker ignored him and said to Zhou Xuanji hurriedly. Ji Xian has already reincarnated and turned into someone called Su Han. Xiao Hongjun forced me to look for him, but I could not find him. However, I discovered something. Ji Xian descended to the mortal realm under the orders of a powerhouse, and his goal was to exterminate the human race. Ji Xian is not simple. He is very famous in the upper worlds. Even Xiao Hongjun wants to subdue him. Zhou Xuanji frowned. Su Han. Why did he feel like he had heard this name before? Why do you know these people from the upper realm so well? Zhou Xuanji asked curiously. He felt that these two were hiding many things from him. Dao Seeker explained. We are tribulation executives. No matter who descends to the mortal world, we will be able to sense it. Over the years, we have met many acquaintances who have descended to the mortal world. We have talked about Xiao Hongjun and Ji Xian. The man in the raincoat interrupted him. Ji Xian's reincarnation will take several hundred years for him to mature, so there's nothing to worry about. I've divined that the descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline is related to you, because his fate is constantly changing and disappearing. In this world, only your fate cannot be divined. Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes and asked, You mean that the descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline is by my side? It's very likely that he's from Emperor Sword Court? The man in the raincoat nodded. After learning of this possibility, he was also very shocked. How could there be such a coincidence in this world? However, now that Emperor Sword Court had become stronger, such a situation was indeed possible. Dao Seeker snorted coldly. The descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline needs time to rise. Moreover, how could he be a greater threat than Ji Xian? You should know who Ji Xian is. He is a first-class great sovereign with unparalleled talent. When Sei Jutian banished him to the mortal world, I already felt that something was wrong. So it was to deceive people. First-grade great emperor? Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. He felt that Dao Seeker's words did not hold water. Was there a need for such a cover-up? Or did Sei Jutian have a deeper plan? Daoseeker and the man in the woven rush raincoat began arguing, which gave Zhou Xuanji a headache. Rumble! The sound of thunder suddenly rang out, startling the three of them. Rumbling thunder clouds gathered above Skyfall. Looking out, the sky was also filled with thunder clouds, covering tens of thousands of miles, and perhaps even further. A terrifying heavenly might descended, causing everyone to tremble. Qiu Dao's expression changed, and he said in shock, "Could it be? Heavenly Palace?" Zhou Xuanji looked at the sky, his gaze cold. The day had finally come. The Heavenly Palace would definitely not give him the time to grow after he became a Grade 1 great sovereign. As expected, in less than a year, the Heavenly Hall descended to the mortal world and started the war. At the foot of Skyfall, Xianyuan Shenhao, who was dressed in simple cloth clothes, looked up with a grave expression. Zhang Quanglan, who was chopping wood at the side, wiped the sweat off his forehead and said with a smile, "Brother Shenhao, stop looking. The court lord has probably made a breakthrough again. Follow me and chop wood properly. You'll find that this kind of life is quite interesting." Watching the grass grow in summer, watching the leaves fall in autumn, watching the snow fall in winter, watching all living things grow in spring. Isn't life like this? Living from death, going around in circles, fighting for a lifetime. Who can escape death? He smiled like an old man who had seen through the world of mortals and returned to his native land. Xianyuan Shenhao ignored him, but stared at the billowing thunderclouds in the sky. "They're here," he mumbled. He had stayed in Skyfall for some time, and found this place quite interesting. Moreover, he had not defeated Zhou Xuanji yet, so he did not hope for the Heavenly Hall to descend. Because he knew that once the Heavenly Hall invaded, Zhou Xuanji and the Northern Wilderness humans would die for sure. Other than the Heavenly Hall, there would surely be powerful cultivators from other factions. "Zhou Xuanji, I'm the great commander of the Heavenly Hall Li Min. I want to see what you can do to stop the Heavenly Hall." A loud cry resounded across the clouds. The thunderclouds on the horizon parted, and beams of golden light shone out. Many majestic figures appeared above the sea of clouds, all of them wearing shining divine armors, looking mighty and domineering. At a glance, there were countless soldiers from the Heavenly Hall. A gigantic figure that was thousands of meters tall appeared on the horizon like a giant that created the world. He held a gigantic sword in his hand that was even larger than the mountains beside him. His back was facing the blazing sun, making it so that no one could see his true appearance. Anyone who saw such a scene would be afraid. "Gather the entire court. Formation." Su Yang drew his sword and roared with all his might. He was not afraid but excited instead. "I can finally show my power," Daoseeker said with a solemn expression. "The real catastrophe is here." Zhou Xuanji walked past him and leaped into the air, ascending into the sky. The sun-devouring Tiango sword and dream-devouring heavenly martial devil rinsing appeared in his hands. The Emperor's Wei thousand-hand sword Buddha materialized and rose from the ground with Zhou Xuanji on its head. Seeing Zhou Xuanji, all the disciples of Emperor Sword Court were excited. After a new round of recruitment, Emperor Sword Court had more than 1.5 million people. Most of them were odd-job disciples. The Sword Emperor who transcends the past and present indeed. So domineering. Yang Zhongtian stood by the cliff and sighed in amazement as he stroked his long beard. Yang Xindi, who was beside him, was silent. His eyes were burning with passion. Lin Changge, Ning Zifeng, Xiao Jinghong, Meng Tianlang, Chen Bantian, Zhao Tsongjian, and the others drew their swords and landed on the thousand-hand sword Buddha's shoulder. Roar! A domineering dragon roar shook the heavens and the earth. Next, Finyu Dragon King coiled around Skyfall and rose into the sky. The dragon's body was like a mountain range, majestic and majestic. Zhou Xiaoqi turned into a fire qilin. His shoulders were 500 meters tall, and his hooves were covered in flames. He levitated behind Skyfall. The Heavenly Hall is seeking death. What should Emperor Sword Court do? Zhou Xuanji said. His voice reverberated across the heavens and earth. Although his tone was indifferent, it made all the disciples of Emperor Sword Court's blood boil. Kill with the sword. 1.5 million disciples drew their swords and roared furiously. Their voices gathered together, and it was so majestic that it shook the mountains and rivers. Sword Qi soared into the sky and dispersed the thunderclouds around Skyfall. Blocking a chariot with your bare hands. Xianyuan Xinhao shook his head and mumbled. He noticed that Zhang Kuanglan was still laughing and said unpleasantly, "Trash, you are going to die soon. Why are you still laughing?" Zhang Kuanglan waved his hand and continued chopping firewood with a smile. Xianyuan Xinhao was silent. "Zhou Xuanji, you are powerful indeed. But you are the only powerful person in the northern wilderness region. Can you protect everyone?" Divine General Li Min's voice came again. His tone was filled with mockery. "Millions of the Heavenly Hall's army have descended to every corner of the human race. Let's see how you will save the world with your sword." "Boys kill." Divine General Li Min roared furiously. A few thousand meters tall, he charged over from the horizon with his sword. He was unstoppable, destroying mountains and splashing lakes. "Kill." The Heavenly Hall's army roared as well. Like a torrential storm, they descended from the sky and charged toward Skyfall. Zhou Xuanji snorted coldly. Countless sword shadows appeared in the dark sky. There were so many that they were as numerous as the stars in the night sky. Primordial Chaos Sword Shadow. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 403. Millions of sword shadows levitated around the thousand-hand sword Buddha. The scene was extremely majestic, and everyone on Emperor Sword Court's side was in awe. What kind of mastery of the sword's way was required to cast such a sword technique? The sword shadows connected and gathered into mountains and rivers, forming a primordial chaos. Zhou Xuanji focused his eyes, and the primordial chaos sword shadow charged toward the Heavenly Hall's army. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The millions of sword shadows moved in unison with great momentum. The powerful gale that they generated was about to sweep up the forest below. The Heavenly Hall's side was shocked too, but it was too late for them to retreat. Soon, the primordial chaos sword shadow charged into the Heavenly Hall's army. Explosions occurred one after another. The Heavenly Hall's soldiers were blasted into pieces by the sword shadows, and their souls dispersed. Powerful, domineering. Emperor Sword Court's disciples' blood boiled. If not for the fact that they were in a battle, they would have knelt down to Zhou Xuanji immediately. Boom! Divine General Li Min charged over furiously, crushing the mountains along the way. He swung his giant sword and blocked the primordial chaos sword shadow, giving the Heavenly Hall's army a chance to breathe. They made a detour and charged toward Skyfall. Zhou Xuanji merged into the thousand-hand sword Buddha's body. Next, the thousand-hand sword Buddha opened its eyes, and two rays of golden radiance swept across the land. Facing the ferocious Divine General Li Min, the thousand-hand sword Buddha grew 1,000 arms and charged forward with its sword. The two peerless giants fought fiercely in the wilderness. The two forces clashed like two torrents, and people died in an instant. The Heavenly Hall's power was restricted by the heavenly law, but overall, they were still more powerful than Emperor Sword Court. Zhou Xuanji decided to end the battle quickly. He would kill Divine General Li Min first before destroying the Heavenly Hall's army. The thousand-hand sword Buddha came up to Divine General Li Min and slashed with its 1,000 swords, forcing Divine General Li Min to retreat. His power was restricted to ninth tribulation scattered immortal by the heavenly law. Although he could still dominate the world, he was at a disadvantage against Zhou Xuanji. How can it be? This guy's power. Divine General Li Min's majestic face darkened, and he was horrified in his heart. Zhou Xuanji drew on the power of the heavens and the earth, causing his power to explosively increase. At the same time, he used universal attraction, sucking him in. An earth-shattering explosion resounded. Divine General Li Min's shoulders were slashed, and the terrifying force forced him to kneel on the ground. The ground cracked and dust flew into the air. The heavenly halls of the divine. However, the people from the heavenly palace were shocked. Impossible. General Li Min is at a disadvantage? Damn it, no wonder he's ranked 12th on the Great Emperor Steel. Everyone be careful. The northern wilderness humans must be eliminated. Let's fight. Although the heavenly palace's soldiers were frightened, they did not show any fear. Instead, they erupted with even stronger willpower. The surrounding 10,000 miles had turned into a battlefield. The disciples of the Emperor's Sword Court controlled their swords to fight, traversing the battlefield wantonly. Lin Chang'e and Ning Zifeng were very domineering. Both of them wielded the ancestral dragon divine sword and transformed into ancestral dragons. Chen Bantian and Meng Tianling weren't any weaker. The 10,000-year princes were getting stronger as they fought, and their eyes were filled with excitement and madness. Xiao Jinghong activated the Emperor's Wei Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha. Although it was only a few dozen meters tall, and was not as exaggerated as Zhou Xuanji's Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha, it was still powerful. No one could stop him. Zhou Xuanji suddenly deactivated the Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha state, and 9 sword souls appeared behind him. The sword souls slashed out continuously. Li Min instinctively raised his sword to block, but it was useless. The sword light flashed, and most people subconsciously closed their eyes. Li Min opened his eyes wide. His body was blasted apart and turned into countless sparks. Zhou Xuanji focused his eyes, and the true Lord Xianxing's sword appeared above his head. Swoosh! Ranged sword propelling. Li Min's soul was hidden among the sparks. He could not dodge in time, and was penetrated by the true Lord Xianxing's sword. How can it be? Li Min opened his eyes wide and looked at Zhou Xuanji in disbelief. He was defeated, and he lost so quickly. He still had many powerful divine abilities that he did not have time to use. Zhou Xuanji appeared in front of him out of nowhere. The 9-sword purple Tai Chi diagram appeared on his forehead. Nothing is impossible. I'm more powerful than you, he said coldly. After he spoke, he absorbed Li Min's soul with the Tianxia map. He turned around, and all the legendary swords appeared around him. More than 100 legendary swords were surrounded by dragon-shaped sword chi. 10,000 sword dragon incantation. Kill, he cried loudly. All the legendary swords dashed out with extreme speed, and killed the Heavenly Palace's soldiers one after another. No one could stop them. His soul had already transformed, and his mental control was extremely powerful. None of the Emperor's Sword Court's disciples were accidentally injured. Hundreds of swords shot out at the same time, and the sound of air being torn could be heard. When the divine sword pierced through the disciples of the Emperor's Sword Court and killed the enemy, it moved on to the next enemy. All of them widened their eyes in shock. So fast. Meng Tianling couldn't help but gulp as he looked at the godly swords that were flying in all directions. He was too strong. Even if the upper realm's heavenly hall descended, it would not stand a chance against Zhou Xuanji. Was becoming a great emperor really that amazing? His eyes burned with fighting spirit. Run! The commander is dead. We've lost. Impossible. How can he be so strong? Could it be that he is not restricted by the heavenly Tao? Why is this happening? With Li Min's death, the legendary swords wreaked havoc. The heavenly hall's army collapsed in an instant. All of them fled in a hurry, but Zhou Xuanji would not let them go. The massacre continued. At the same time, the Heavenly Hall's army arrived in various parts of the northern wilderness region. The divine generals and spiritual venerables led their troops and slaughtered the humans wantonly. Miserable screams filled the desolate north's land, and blood almost dyed the whole country red. Although Zhou Xuanji won, it would be difficult for him to protect the human world alone. All the sacred grounds and the 5 great dynasties took action. The flames of war spread across the world. Boom! Boom! 2 beams of light descended from the sky and landed on the beach, splashing up the seawater. 2 domineering men walked out from the powerful beams of light. One of them wore a heavy and sinister-looking black armor. He had a pair of dragon horns in his black hair, and his face was covered in black scales. His eyes were green in color. The other man was dressed like a scholar. His blue robe danced in the wind, and he looked handsome. He held a folding fan in his hand. The blue-robed scholar shook his head with a smile. I didn't expect Li Min to die so quickly. The heavenly hall is useless indeed. The black-scaled man said with a deep voice. He's a first-class great emperor ranked 12th on the great emperor stele after all. From what they said, they were obviously not from the heavenly hall. Their words even seemed to belittle the heavenly hall. Qin Mahuai, the divine lord allowed you to maintain your cultivation at First Revolution Golden Immortal. Don't die. Within 3 days, I want you to bring Zhou Xuanji's head to me. The blue-robed scholar instructed as he looked toward the horizon. Qin Mahuai frowned and asked, "It's not a problem to kill him. What are you going to do?" The blue-robed scholar waved his fan and laughed coldly. "I'm going to settle the score with an old friend." After that, he turned into a series of afterimages and dashed toward the horizon. Qin Mahuai thought about it for a while before he turned around and walked toward the northern wilderness region. He smiled cruelly and mumbled to himself, "First-class great emperor? Hee, I haven't killed a first-class great emperor before. Zhou Xuanji, I will let you die a painful death." Come, wonderful bookhouse. Chapter 404. Skyfall. Smoke filled the air for tens of thousands of miles. The forests around Skyfall were in ruins, and the mountains and rivers were in ruins. There were corpses everywhere. There were disciples of the Emperor Sword Court and soldiers of the Heavenly Palace. Zhou Xuanji sheathed his sword. In less than 20 breaths of time, he had used the 10,000 sword dragon incantation to kill millions of the Heavenly Hall's soldiers. Even though there were some who managed to escape, they were no longer a threat. He looked back at Skyfall and frowned. He was hesitating. Should they go and help the human race? If he left, would enemies launch a sneak attack on Skyfall? Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Zongjian, Lin Changge, and the others began to clean up the battlefield. Daoya Old Man suddenly flew in front of him and said with a serious expression, "The calamity that we predicted might be coming soon." He was reminding Zhou Xuanji. He was not afraid of his own death, but he was worried about Jiang Shui and her mother. Zhou Xuanji's talent was incredibly powerful, and if he became demonic because of his wife and daughter's death, that would be terrifying. Zhou Xuanji understood what he meant, but was still a little hesitant. What should I do? Facing Zhou Xuanji's question, Daoya Old Man fell into silence. Decades ago, Zhou Xuanji would often ask him all sorts of questions. After he became #1 in the world, he no longer asked him such questions. Daoya Old Man sighed and said, "Gather everyone and discuss." Zhou Xuanji nodded. Half a day later, all the elders of the Emperor's Sword Guild gathered in the pavilion at the top of the mountain. Emperor Sword Court had lost nearly 100,000 disciples in this battle. Even though Zhou Xuanji had acted quickly, so many of them had still died. The difference in strength between the two sides was simply too great. After Zhou Xuanji expressed his hesitation, everyone fell silent. He looked at Jiang Shui. He was most worried about her. No lofty sentiments or lofty ambitions could make her a worry-free life. Zhou Shaoxian clenched her fists and said, "Father, don't worry about us. Go and save the humans. The disciples of Emperor Sword Court definitely have relatives outside. If the human race is destroyed and only Emperor Sword Court is left, how long can they last? Don't worry about me. I'll take care of myself." She was not sad but excited. In her heart, her father was an indomitable hero who took on the responsibility of protecting the human race. Zhou Xuanji rolled his eyes at her and said, "Can you protect your mother?" Zhou Shaoxian immediately patted her chest and said proudly, "Of course I can." The next second her smile froze. "Wait a minute. Protect my mother? What about me?" Jiang Shui held Zhou Xuanji's hand and said with a gentle smile, "Go, we must unite the human race, or else our situation will only become more and more difficult." The others nodded. Although they did not want to die, they understood the stakes. Zhou Xuanji immediately got up and turned into a stream of sword light, disappearing into the horizon. Xiao Jinghong swept the others with his gaze and said, "We must be prepared for battle. We can't distract Master, and we can't disappoint him." Chun Bantiang clenched his fists and chuckled. "This is a great opportunity for the Yellow Dragon royal bloodline's 10,000-year princes to rise." Meng Tianling glared at him, meaning to say, "With me around you want to rise?" The others had their own thoughts and did not respond. Zhou Xuanji relied on the power of the heavens and earth to directly soar into the human race's territory. The sounds of killing, crying, fighting, cursing, and so on, all kinds of sounds entered his ears. He opened his eyes. The city in front of him was filled with the flames of war. There were people fighting everywhere. To be more precise, it was the Heavenly Palace that was slaughtering the people of the northern wilderness. He immediately summoned all his divine swords and turned the tide of the battle. He didn't even look back as he flew deeper into the human territory. 10 breaths later, the legendary swords returned to his side. In the ruined city, the survivors were stunned. It's the Sword Emperor. The Sword Emperor saved us. I knew the Sword Emperor would not abandon us. Damn, why didn't he come earlier? We can only blame ourselves for being too weak. The Sword Emperor has shouldered too much. Don't push the blame to him. Damn heavens. I want to go against the heavens. The night passed. When the sun rose, Zhou Xuanji had already saved 73 cities. He encountered many dead cities along the way. In just one day, the northern wilderness's human population was reduced by at least 30%. Or even more. Zhou Xuanji's heart was heavy. He could only try his best to save them. Soon he came to Great Zhou. Great Zhou had already lost 2/3 of its territory, and there were countless casualties. He rode on the 100 or so legendary swords, as though he was riding on a river of swords. Everywhere he passed, the Heavenly Hall's army perished. Fortunately, Zhou Qingxin and the royal family were not in danger yet. In the eyes of the Heavenly Hall, the royal family was just an ordinary person, and there was no need to target them. In fact, the Heavenly Hall did not suffer many casualties in the battle against the northern wilderness. Zhou Xuanji did not stop, and continued flying toward Great Qin. Suddenly he stopped, because he bumped into two familiar faces. It was Baihao Yisin and Feng Yule. The two were resting by the riverside. Baihao Yisin was as elegant as ever. However, Feng Yule looked very strange. His body was wrapped in white cloth, and only his head was exposed. The two saw Zhou Xuanji and the majestic river of swords. Oh no! Baihao Yisin's expression changed. He looked away instinctively, and did not dare to look at Zhou Xuanji. Feng Yule snorted coldly, looking quite displeased. Every time he saw Zhou Xuanji he regretted it. He regretted not trying to capture Zhou Xuanji, instead of this useless great emperor in front of him. Zhou Xuanji looked at Baihao Yisin and said, "Did you descend to the mortal realm to destroy your descendants?" Having heard this, Baihao Yisin was like a cat whose tail was stepped on. He jumped up and cried out furiously, "You dare to question this emperor? If this emperor was so cowardly and heartless, why did I descend to the mortal realm? Have you seen this emperor kill anyone?" Zhou Xuanji thought about it, and realized that it was true. This fellow had never killed a mortal before. Even if it was an enemy, he had never killed them. Baihao Yisin harumphed and said, "This emperor advises you to give up. Don't waste your time. You should have limitless glory, and should not be dragged down by these mortals. You've already done well, and are not inferior to those famous figures." Boom! A terrifying figure descended from the sky, and landed on the other side of the river. His body burned with demonic flames, and his aura was incredibly majestic. He was 15 meters tall, and his thick black armor made him look like a demonic beast, giving off formless roars. Baihao Yisin's expression fell and he cursed. As expected, nothing good comes out of encountering this boy. Even this fellow came. He did not say anything and turned to run. Swish! A black demonic arrow landed in front of him, giving him a big fright, and causing him to quickly stop. Feng Yule asked anxiously, "Who is he?" Baihao Yisin turned and sighed as he said, "Qin Mahuai, are you really going to act against this emperor?" Qin Mahuai cruelly laughed and said, "Great Emperor Heartless, it's best if you don't go anywhere. Someone wants to see you, but before that..." He looked up at Zhou Xuanji and coldly laughed as he said, "You're Zhou Xuanji? You don't look like much, but since you have the talent of a first-class great emperor, I'll do my best. Are you prepared to suffer?" A look of jealousy flashed in the depths of his eyes. Zhou Xuanji felt quite confused. "Did I kill your father? What a bad temper." Chapter 405. True God. Zhou Xuanji frowned. He had heard this term again. He looked towards Qin Mahuai. This fellow has a strength that surpasses a great tribulation scattered immortal? What was above a great tribulation scattered immortal? Qin Mahuai flipped his right hand, and then an enormous blade appeared in his hand. This blade was 15 m long, like a crescent moon, completely pitch black, and suffused with a cold glow. He slowly rose into the air with a sinister smile on his face. The more he looked at Zhou Xuanji, the more jealous he became. Don't you know what's above a great tribulation scattered immortal? Qin Mahuai laughed coldly and said, Then I'll tell you. Above the 9th tribulation bodiless immortal is the 10th revolution golden immortal. Even though you possess the aptitude of the 1st grade, it's a pity that you haven't seen a vaster sky. Qi nurturing foundation establishment, enlightening, inner core, spirit spring, nascent soul, astral projection, spirit refinement Mahayana. 9th tribulation bodiless immortal, 10th revolution golden immortal. Next would be the true gods. Or could it be that there was a gap between the realms? Zhou Xuanji thought about it and felt a little displeased. This guy's tone was really arrogant. He stood on the Sword River and looked down at Qin Mahuai. You are a 10th transformation golden immortal? Qin Mahuai smiled in disdain. Do I need to be a 10th revolution golden immortal to kill you? Boom! He charged toward Zhou Xuanji and slashed with his saber. The two were less than 100 meters apart. Zhou Xuanji swung his sword instinctively. Dang! Zhou Xuanji was sent flying and landed on a mountain 1,000 meters away. His body was embedded into the mountain, and his swords fell to the ground. Bai Hao Yisan covered his face and said, As expected, the difference between a great tribulation scattered immortal and a 1st revolution golden immortal is insurmountable. He had personally witnessed how powerful Zhou Xuanji was. It could even be said that he surpassed great tribulation scattered immortals. Unfortunately, he was still no match for a 1st revolution golden immortal. Feng Qiu was dumbfounded. Wasn't the difference in strength a little too great? Qin Mahuai's demonic flames billowed as he flew towards Zhou Xuanji, a look of arrogance and disdain on his face. A 1st grade great emperor that had yet to mature was only SO. Compared to that person, this kid was not worthy to be a 1st grade great sovereign. At this moment, Zhou Xuanji slowly stood up from the cliff, and 9 sword souls condensed behind him, giving off a powerful light and giving off a divine and domineering aura. His face was expressionless, and a 9-sword purple Tai Chi diagram appeared on his forehead. His eyes also turned purple, and his black hair fluttered slightly. His entire aura suddenly changed. Xiao! Xiao! Swoosh! One divine sword after another flew in front of him, but Qin Mahuai did not stop them. Zhou Xuanji twisted his neck and said, You black gecko demon. Did anyone tell you about the consequences of angering me? Oh no, because they're all dead. He held the sun-devouring Tiango sword and the dream-devouring true martial devil-sweeping sword in his hand, and he stepped on the river of swords as he approached Qin Mahuai. So what if he was a 1st revolution golden immortal? It was only 1 level higher than a 9 tribulation bodiless immortal. Zhou Xuanji's eyes flashed with battle intent. His body turned golden as he charged out with the 9 sword souls. Qin Mahuai raised his saber and slashed out. In that moment, an eerie wind blew, rushing towards Zhou Xuanji from all directions. It turned into countless wind blades, and each wind blade was dozens of feet long, looking as if it could tear the sky apart. Zhou Xuanji used the trisource vein-severing sword ferociously. His sword chi exploded and shattered all the wind blades around him. He took 5 steps in succession to arrive before Qin Mahuai, and then his swords danced about violently while his attacks were fierce and overbearing. Moreover, his sword was swift to the point it created countless afterimages. Qin Mahuai easily blocked each of Zhou Xuanji's swords, seeming to be at ease. Boom! A bolt of lightning blasted down, landing on the ground and blasting open a scorched hole. Rocks flew everywhere as heavenly might spread throughout the heavens and earth. As Qin Mahuai's aura became more and more powerful, the heavenly might also became stronger. The mountains trembled, and the earth trembled as countless cracks covered the ground. Bai Hao Yisan and Feng Qiu both retreated. Looking at this apocalyptic scene, Feng Qiu gulped and asked, We're not going to run? Bai Hao Yisan bitterly laughed and said, We can't run. A 1st revolution golden immortal can see through the entire mortal realm. Rather than suffering, it's better to just surrender. Feng Qiu looked at him in confusion and asked, He wants to capture you. Wasn't this fellow very arrogant, and did not submit to anyone? That's right, capture not kill, Bai Hao Yisan said as he shrugged. Hearing this, Feng Qiu's eyes widened, and he asked carefully, After you're captured, what will happen to the northern wilderness human race? We'll all die. What about me? You're not from the northern wilderness? You're not going to save me. This emperor has been captured. Damn you. Feng Qiu almost went berserk, but he was punched to the ground by Bai Hao Yisan. He said disdainfully, "You dare to speak rudely to this emperor." He turned his gaze to the battle in the distance, and a trace of shock flashed in his eyes. Zhou Xuanji had not ascended yet, and yet he could fight against a first revolution golden immortal. Just what was this boy's limit? Zhou Xuanji unleashed his dual sword wills, and the 9 sword souls behind him continuously shot out. His power and speed gradually increased. Qin Mohuai fought very easily, and he noticed this. Your talent is indeed incredible, but it's a pity that there's an insurmountable gap between you and a first revolution golden immortal. He condescendingly laughed, and the smile on his face became crazed. A first-class great emperor. If he could kill him, his name would definitely shake the upper realm. Zhou Xuanji did not stop attacking, but he slightly frowned. He immediately used the power of the heavens and earth, and turned into an ancestor dragon, as he slammed into Qin Mohuai. Qin Mohuai was caught off guard, and was sent crashing into the forest. He charged along the ground with unstoppable momentum. They were incredibly fast, and they smashed through mountains. Soon, they broke through Great Chen's border wall, and continued onwards. The cultivators and commoners along the way were all dumbfounded. Zhou Xuanji had turned into an ancestor dragon, and his dragon body was nearly 3,000 meters long. He was incredibly massive, and looked like a mountain range. He wantonly twisted and turned, looking incredibly domineering. Qin Mohuai bent his legs and stomped into the ground, using all of his strength to resist the ancestor dragon. His strength was not just a little bit stronger than Zhou Xuanji's, and he quickly suppressed Zhou Xuanji with brute force. The 5-clawed golden dragon dissipated, and Zhou Xuanji descended from the sky. He slashed out with his 2 swords, and the 9 sword souls behind him continuously slashed out. Sword light flashed under the sky, and a massive explosion sounded out. The ground in the surrounding 1,000 meters collapsed. Trees were uprooted, and lake water flew everywhere. Clang! Qin Mohuai blocked 2 swords with his saber, and he arrogantly laughed. Zhou Xuanji, is this all you've got? A savage light appeared in his eyes, and the demonic flames on his body suddenly flared out, causing Zhou Xuanji to quickly retreat. Demonic arrows flew out from within the demonic flames, shooting towards Zhou Xuanji like a wild gale. He did his best to defend, and was not injured. However, at that moment, Qin Mohuai suddenly appeared behind him. His left hand grabbed Zhou Xuanji's collar, and threw him hundreds of meters away, smashing him into the ground. In the next second, Qin Mohuai spun and slashed out. Zhou Xuanji, who had appeared behind him, could not dodge in time, and a large gash appeared on his abdomen, from which blood spurted out. Too slow. Qin Mohuai savagely laughed. Seeing Zhou Xuanji in pain, he felt quite excited. He stomped down on Zhou Xuanji's chest and sent him flying. Despicable. Zhou Xuanji gritted his teeth, and did his best to stabilize himself. However, Qin Mohuai's strength was simply too great. A palm suddenly pressed against his back, helping him dissipate some of the force. Soon, he stopped on a hill 10,000 meters away. He looked back and saw that the person helping him was Devil Emperor Dugu. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 406. He's a first revolution golden immortal. You're not his match. Devil Emperor Dugu said expressionlessly, as he stared at Qin Mohuai. Although he did not look at Zhou Xuanji, he felt extremely complicated. For years ago, he thought that Zhou Xuanji was dead. Who would have thought that 3 years later, this brat would become a great emperor, annihilating the heavenly law army in one fell swoop and killing spirit sovereign Yan. This was simply unbelievable. So this time, he decided to protect Zhou Xuanji no matter what. He saw limitless potential in Zhou Xuanji. Back off, I'll help you repel him. Devil Emperor Dugu took a step forward, and said in a deep voice. Zhou Xuanji looked at him in confusion and asked, You only have 6th tribulation scattered immortal cultivation. How can you defeat him? 6th tribulation bodiless immortal. How long has it been since he was resurrected? His cultivation base had almost caught up to him. The heavenly Tao was unfair. Zhou Xuanji was envious in his heart. Devil Emperor Dugu replied, I can't defeat him, but I can find some helpers. As he spoke, he raised his hands and prepared to form a hand seal. But Zhou Xuanji stretched out his hand to stop him, and walked in front of him. I haven't lost yet. After saying this, Zhou Xuanji stepped forward. What a joke! How could he allow more beings from the upper realm to descend to the mortal world? He didn't want to owe Devil Emperor Dugu too many favors. Oh, I was wondering who it was. So it's the famous Devil Emperor Dugu. If the divine cliff knows that you're still alive, will they descend to the mortal world to capture you? Qin Mahuai flew over with his massive saber in hand. Not only did the devilish flames on his body not diminish, they burned even brighter. Devil Monarch Dugu was expressionless. Qin Mahuai, don't you think it's beneath your status to stir up trouble in the lower realm? Qin Mahuai grinned and said, You might not know this, but this kid's ranking on the Great Emperor Steel is higher than yours. Devil Emperor Dugu remained unfazed. He was indeed not as talented as Zhou Xuanji. This kid could probably be ranked in the top 20 of the Great Emperor Steel. Zhou Xuanji leaped into the air and raised his right hand. The 9-flame Chimera Demon sword appeared in his hand. The power of heaven and earth fused into his body, and his eyes turned purple again. The 9-sword purple Tai Chi diagram on his forehead burned with purple flames, as if it would fly out at any moment. Qin Mahuai glanced at the sword in his hand and sneered. You want to rely on a sword to defeat me? This sword was clearly extraordinary, but no matter how extraordinary it was, it could not give Zhou Xuanji power that surpassed the mortal realm. Zhou Xuanji held the 9-flame Chimera Demon sword and legendary swords appeared beneath his feet, forming a river of swords. The swords at the back flew to the front, and the cycle continued as he walked towards Qin Mahuai. This sword is called the 9-flame Nightmare. Have you heard of it? Zhou Xuanji asked calmly, his eyes cold and sharp. The flames on the blade burned fiercely, turning it into a flaming sword. Devil Emperor Dugu frowned, wondering whose legacy Zhou Xuanji had obtained. He had a certain understanding of Zhou Xuanji. This brat could always take out countless treasured swords and become more and more powerful. There weren't many sword emperors in the 9 emperors of the sword Dao who had so many swords. The Hegemon Sword Emperor and the Sky-Splitting Sword Emperor could be ruled out, as the two of them were not considered the cream of the crop in the upper realm. Could it be the first Sword Emperor? 9-flame Nightmare? Nameless sword. Qin Mahuai laughed disdainfully. The demonic flames on his body converged into a suit of armor, attaching to his heavy armor. Even the blade was wrapped in demonic flames. This fellow seemed disdainful, but his attitude clearly indicated that he was going all out. Shameless. Zhou Xuanji cursed in his heart, and his murderous intent grew. He was very excited. It was his first time using the god-slaying legendary sword. He hoped that it would not disappoint him. At this moment, Qin Mahuai moved. Like a ray of black light he flew across the sky. Zhou Xuanji's eyes sharpened, and he slashed with his sword. Sky-dominating divine sword soul. Roar! The 9-flame Nightmare's thunderous roar shook the entire northern wilderness region. Even Zhou Xuanji's ears were ringing from the deafening roar. Qin Mahuai, who was charging toward him, was shocked, and his eyes widened. The sword flashed in his eyes. PFFTT. He was cut in half by the sword chi. The horrifying sword chi swept across hundreds of miles in an instant, cutting all the mountains along the way in half. Even the thunderclouds in the sky were cracked. The sword chi disappeared into the horizon, and no one knew where it ended. The heavens and earth were silent. Devil Emperor Dugu, Bai Hao Isin and Feng Qiu were all dumbfounded. They looked as though they had seen a ghost. What did they see? Zhou Xuanji maintained his posture as he swung his sword, panting heavily. This slash had used up all the magic energy in his body. The instant he swung his sword, he felt dizzy, and his vision turned black. He looked at Qin Mahuai, who was cut in half. Boom! Qin Mahuai's body exploded into countless strands of black qi and dissipated. His soul did not escape, and was destroyed by the slash. He died, and his Dao disappeared. Zhou Xuanji saw a valley in the ground in front of him. It was so deep that he could not see the bottom. It was hundreds of meters wide, and extended to the end of the world. So domineering. His heart raced, and he was very excited. This was the god-slaying legendary sword, killing a First Revolution golden immortal with one slash. Awesome. So awesome. How can it be? Devil Emperor Dugu was stunned. He mumbled to himself and began to doubt his life. Vaihao Isin, who was far away, almost knelt down in front of Zhou Xuanji. This is a divine weapon. His face was filled with jealousy. When he thought of his own divine weapon, he felt like *T. Feng Qiu, on the other hand, was dispirited. He regretted it so much. On the blue ocean, two figures stood facing each other. They were Xiao Hongjun and the blue-robed scholar. Heavenly Lord Schemer, did the Divine Lord send you to do something shameful again? Xiao Hongjun said mockingly. Her eyes were filled with disdain. Heavenly Lord Schemer was the blue-robed scholar. Heavenly Lord was a position. Very few people knew Heavenly Lord Schemer's real name. Heavenly Lord Schemer waved his fan and said with a smile, "To tell you the truth, I came here to find Ji Xian and the descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline." Xiao Hongjun laughed coldly. Zhou Xuanji is a first-class great emperor. Aren't you going to rope him in? Ji Xian was also one of her targets. How could she give him up? Heavenly Lord Schemer shook his head and laughed. Zhou Xuanji has not ascended yet, and is stubbornly trying to save the northern wilderness humans. He's hopeless. Why would the Divine Lord care about him? Qin Mahuai has already gone to capture him. Zhou Xuanji is most likely dead. Qin Mahuai. Xiao Hongjun frowned. She knew that this person was very powerful, and had the protection of the Divine Lord. Zhou Xuanji would definitely die against him. What a pity. She was quite interested in Zhou Xuanji. Roar! The 9 flame chimera demons' roar suddenly sounded out, shocking the two of them, and causing them to look in the direction of the northern wilderness region. They quickly calculated with different expressions. Xiao Hongjun was surprised, and Heavenly Lord Schemer was gloomy. Qin Mahuai was dead. Zhou Xuanji could kill him? He must have inherited Great Emperor Wu Wang's legacy. Xiao Hongjuan's eyes flickered as she thought to herself. Heavenly Lord Schemer had to re-evaluate Zhou Xuanji. He suddenly remembered what the Divine Lord said to him. He looked up at Xiao Hongjun and said, "You want to find the tomb of Great Emperor Wu Wang, right? Let's work together. You help me find Ji Xian, and I'll help you find the tomb of Great Emperor Wu Wang." Xiao Hongjun asked mockingly, "Aren't you going to take revenge for Qin Mahuai?" Heavenly Lord Schemer shook his head and said, "My strength is about the same as Qin Mahuai's, and I'm only a First Revolution golden immortal. Even if I go, I'll most likely be in danger. It's best to leave Zhou Xuanji to the Heavenly Hall and other factions." He changed the topic and said profoundly, "Xian Daoya has also descended to the mortal world. This person will not be able to escape death." Com. Wonderful Bookstore. Com. Chapter 407. Xian Daoya? Xiao Hongjuan's eyes sparkled as he fell into deep thought. Things were getting more and more interesting. The northern wilderness region could attract the attention of so many powerful cultivators. Heavenly Lord Schemer said, "You and I should act quickly to find Ji Xian first, and then Great Emperor Wu Wang's tomb. It's not that I have other intentions, but that Ji Xian is too weak. You should understand what I mean." Xiao Hongjun nodded lightly, but did not agree in his heart. "Sorry, I want Ji Xian too." Within the northern wilderness region, Zhou Xuanji landed and stored all the legendary swords into the supreme storage. Devil Emperor Dugu walked up to him with a complicated expression. "This sword should be a supreme treasure from the upper realm?" That slash was too horrifying. Zhou Xuanji did not reply and let him guess. He asked, "What's Qin Mahuai's background? What's the status of the divine cliff in the upper realm?" He felt that something was wrong. If the upper realm wanted to destroy the northern wilderness humans, why didn't they do so before but now? Devil Emperor Dugu did not hide it and said, "Qin Mahuai is Divine Lord Ji's subordinate. Ji Xian was taught by Divine Lord Ji, so he changed his surname to Ji. As for the divine cliff, its status in the upper realm is like the northern wilderness region's Dongyuan monastery." Divine Lord Ji? Just when Zhou Xuanji was about to ask further, Devil Emperor Dugu shook his head and said, "Divine Lord Ji is a true god. I advise you not to ask too much, or else you will bring trouble upon yourself." Having heard that, Zhou Xuanji said unpleasantly, I've already killed his subordinate. Isn't that bringing trouble upon myself? Devil Emperor Dugu fell silent. That was true. Divine Lord Ji is proud, and will not attack a junior like you. I advise you to leave the northern wilderness region immediately. Bai Hao Isen's voice came. He was accompanied by Feng Yul and looked arrogant. Zhou Xuanji frowned and ignored him. He looked at Devil Emperor Dugu and asked, Is there really no solution to this? If there was no solution, why did Marquises descend? Devil Emperor Dugu's eyes sparkled. Yes, perhaps you can do it. Zhou Xuanji immediately asked for a solution. Devil Emperor Dugu told him a solution, which made him frown. This method was for Zhou Xuanji to cut off the connection between the northern wilderness region and the upper realm. At that time, the northern wilderness region would become independent and be devoured by the heavenly law. The process was slow, but it would take at least 50,000 years. This period of time was enough for Zhou Xuanji and Devil Emperor Dugu to grow again. When they grew up and connected the northern wilderness region with the upper realm, it would not be easy for anyone to annihilate the northern wilderness humans. Both of them were first-grade great sovereigns. 50,000 years was enough for them to dominate a region. Zhou Xuanji felt that it was feasible. Bai Hao Isen cursed out. Are you crazy? If that happened, the northern wilderness humans would lose control. Although they were innocent, they were really in danger. Do you know why the ancestors chose this time to destroy the northern wilderness humans? Because the demonic emperor defeated the master of the divine cliff. He has proven his Tao and is truly unkillable. Soon he will make a comeback. With his abilities, how can he not find the northern wilderness region? Devil Emperor Dugu's expression changed drastically. He knew how powerful the master of the divine cliff was. Facing that guy, he was almost scared out of his wits. Zhou Xuanji frowned and said, The demonic emperor is the demonic emperor. Will the northern wilderness humans really be affected? Isn't this too strange? He had never seen the demonic emperor before, so it was difficult for him to understand the upper realm's fear. The demonic emperor has descendants in other mortal realms, and all of them have transformed into demons. They are cruel and bloodthirsty, and there are even many true gods among them. Now, only the northern wilderness region is left. Bai Hao Isen sighed. He had seen how powerful the demonic emperor was, and just thinking about it made him shiver. Devil Emperor Dugu said in a low voice, There's no other way. Even if we destroy the northern wilderness humans, it will not threaten the demonic emperor. I want my descendants to live. Zhou Xuanji could not help but look at him in awe. Zhou Xuanji felt great disdain towards those human ancestors. After Lu Wuji, the humans of every generation could be called the demonic emperor's descendants. Why could they slaughter their descendants after ascending and changing their fates? It was unreasonable. Fly high into the sky and slash at the sky with all your strength. With the power you displayed just now, there's hope for you to destroy the northern wilderness region's fate. Devil Emperor Dugu said as he looked at Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji nodded and leaped up into the sky. Bai Hao Isen became anxious and wanted to chase after Zhou Xuanji, but Devil Emperor Dugu pressed down on his shoulder. His expression was cold as he said, Great Emperor Heartless, if you still have a conscience, please just stand by and watch. Bai Hao Isen was so angry that he started to laugh. You dare to threaten this emperor? Not too far away. Feng Yul's expression fell, and he quickly turned to run. Boom! Zhou Xuanji heard an explosion from below, and instinctively looked down. He saw a powerful light shining, covering the surrounding 100 kilometers, and it was still expanding. His expression greatly fell. Wasn't this fellow too much of a dog? He self-destructed at the slightest disagreement? He immediately sped up and left the surface. The 9-flame chimera demon sword appeared in his hand. He drew on the power of the heavens and earth, and began to accumulate power, preparing to unleash his most powerful strike. Soon, he came to an altitude of 50,000 meters. He could no longer see the ground, and there were many layers below. He deeply breathed in and directly unleashed the sky-dominating divine sword soul. He used all of his magic energy in this strike, and did not hold back at all. Roar! The 9-flame chimera demon furiously roared, shaking the heavens and earth. and causing ghosts and gods to weep. Sword chi swept out, reaching thousands of meters and seeming unstoppable. Zhou Xuanji lost all of his strength and naturally fell. He looked at his own sword chi as it continued to soar. How high was the heavens? This was the goal that everyone had been searching for. Suddenly, a ray of light appeared at the top of the pitch-black sky. Countless stars of different brightness appeared and formed a magnificent picture of the starry sky. Next, a shockwave swept toward Zhou Xuanji. He could not dodge in time and was struck head-on. He fainted instantly. This day, the northern wilderness region would never forget this day, because this was the day when the world changed. Whoosh! Seawater splashed onto Zhou Xuanji's face, and he gradually regained consciousness. He opened his eyes and saw the vertical sea surface. He blinked, and his memory began to return. At this moment, he was lying on the beach, soaking in seawater. "You are awake." A voice came from behind. His pupils contracted, and he quickly jumped up. He turned around and saw Daoya Old Man standing on a reef 10 steps away, enjoying the sea breeze. He heaved a sigh of relief and asked, "Why are you here?" Daoya Old Man said with a smile, "I came to find you." Zhou Xuanji said unpleasantly, "Why are you not at Skyfall? You are making me." The next second he suddenly shut up, and his expression turned cold. "Who are you?" he asked with a deep voice. He could not see through this person. Daoya Old Man was only at the spirit refinement stage, but he could see through him immediately. Daoya Old Man stroked his long beard and said with a smile, "My name is Daoya. You can also call me Xian Daoya. I gave you everything, including your life." "Xian Daoya." Zhou Xuanji frowned even more tightly. His mind worked quickly, and all kinds of guesses flashed in his mind. "The Daoya Old Man you know is the reincarnation of one of my clones. Through him, I am able to control the situation in the northern wilderness region. You were supposed to die, but I helped him change your fate, allowing you to have a strong fate." Chapter 408. Doppelganger? Zhou Xuanji fell into silence and did not know what to say. He understood that Xian Daoya was very dangerous. Xian Daoya stared at him and continued to speak. "I gave you rebirth and fate. I even guided my doppelganger to find you and protect you. Do you still think I have enmity against you? If I wanted to kill you, you would have died 1,000 times already." Zhou Xuanji's mouth twitched. Fine, he believed him. This guy was as arrogant as Daoya Old Man. Xian Daoya's appearance changed suddenly. He grew taller and more muscular. His skin was not as wrinkled as before, and his hair was still white. A sense of arrogance could be seen between his brows, as though he was 20 years younger than Daoya Old Man. "So, why did you nurture me like this?" Zhou Xuanji asked as he regulated the magic energy in his body. Xian Daoya stroked his long beard and smiled. "To choose you as my successor, of course. The northern wilderness region is like a game of chess. Many people are playing, and the heavenly hall can only be considered second-rate. They want to destroy the northern wilderness humans, while people at my level want to choose their pawns. It is not important to me whether the northern wilderness humans are destroyed or not." What a show-off. Zhou Xuanji's scalp turned numb. Xian Daoya smiled casually and said, "You broke the northern wilderness region's heavenly law, and the heavenly law retaliated. Now the northern wilderness region is independent, and the outside world cannot enter. Don't think about leaving either. Duga didn't tell you that it's very difficult to reconnect the northern wilderness region with the upper realm. Even ordinary true gods can't do it." He felt a little depressed. How could this guy not be shocked? No matter how bad it was, he should at least be excited. Zhou Xuanji heaved a sigh of relief and said, "I succeeded." As for what Xian Daoya said, he had already thought of it, but he believed in himself. After tens of thousands of years, he was already more powerful than he could imagine. At least for now, the upper realm could no longer send troops to harass the northern wilderness region. Xian Daoya stared at him and felt that this guy was too arrogant. There are still many secrets in the northern wilderness region. Dig them out. Don't think that the crisis is over. I will need you to help me later, Xian Daoya said again. Zhou Xuanji looked up at him in confusion. Xian Daoya didn't go into details and left after saying, "There is always someone better out there." Never lose your respect and don't reveal me. I can be your trump card. Zhou Xuanji frowned. This guy left just like that. He spread out his divine sense, but Xian Daoya's aura had already disappeared. He shook his head and flew inland. After 2 days, he returned to Skyfall. Along the way, he did not encounter any more soldiers from the heavenly palace. Ever since Zhou Xuanji shattered the sky, the Heavenly Hall's soldiers had lost contact with the Heavenly Hall. They were afraid of Zhou Xuanji, so they all hid and waited for the Heavenly Hall to send reinforcements. Zhou Xuanji also understood what had happened while he was unconscious. Everyone in the world had seen heaven-breaking sword. The entire world was bathed in a bright light, and for the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, it was impossible to see anything. After the strong light dissipated, everything returned to normal. The Heavenly Hall retreated. After the shock, the human race began to recover. The entire northern wilderness region was shrouded in sorrow. Zhou Xuanji listened to the elders' reports and glanced at Daoya Old Man occasionally. Daoya Old Man didn't care at first, but he soon realized that something was wrong. After everyone finished chatting, he quickly left. However, he was found by Zhou Xuanji. "Brat, what do you want to do?" Daoya Old Man asked cautiously. Zhou Xuanji looked at him strangely, which made him a little afraid. After living for thousands of years, he had seen all kinds of people. Did something go wrong with Zhou Xuanji's head during the battle? "Are you hiding something from me?" Zhou Xuanji asked seriously. Daoya Old Man's heart jolted. "You know that I was bragging to my disciples?" he said awkwardly. He often bragged that without him, Zhou Xuanji would not have made it this far. He did not expect Zhou Xuanji to know. "Damn it! Who told on me?" Zhou Xuanji was speechless. However, he could tell that this old man did not know about his identity. How pitiful. He had been fighting against fate his entire life, but he was someone else's chess piece. His fate was already determined. Zhou Xuanji sighed and left. Daoya Old Man frowned and mumbled. "This brat is just like his mother. So petty. I was bragging, what's wrong with that?" He left while mumbling, preparing to find some disciples to play with. And now the world finally welcomed peace. Zhou Xuanji no longer went out, and began teaching his disciples to cultivate. After the battle with the Heavenly Hall, Emperor Sword Court became more cohesive. Even the odd job disciples were working hard on their cultivation. Zhou Xuanji focused on cultivation again. He wanted to break through to 10th Revolution Golden Immortal as soon as possible. Half a month later, Devil Emperor Dugu appeared out of nowhere and created a demonic sect in the north. Everyone was in an uproar. The invincible great emperor from 50,000 years ago came back to life. But the world was not worried, because they had the Sword Emperor. They believed that the Sword Emperor was invincible, and even Devil Emperor Dugu could not compare to him. In the blink of an eye, half a year passed. The Heavenly Hall no longer sent people down to the mortal world. The northern wilderness region was no longer in danger. The 8 sanctums and 5 empires were still consoling the humans. The ancient demon sect created by Devil Emperor Dugu had already recruited close to 100,000 disciples. A new era had officially arrived. This day, Zhou Xuanji, who was teaching Zhou Shaoxian cultivation, disappeared on the spot with a change of expression. Halfway up the mountain in the poplar forest, Xiao Jinghong curled up under a tree. His body was trembling, and his face was covered in sweat. "Revered teacher," he called out weakly. Zhou Xuanji appeared before him and channeled magic energy into him. The next second, Zhou Xuanji's expression changed. This was because he did not notice that Xiao Jinghong was injured. Xiao Jinghong's physical body was perfectly fine. Xiao Jinghong's lips trembled as he gritted his teeth and said, "I feel so cold, it's getting colder and colder. As if there's a block of ice in my body." Zhou Xuanji tightly frowned and took out the Holy Light Redemption Sword to heal him, but it was still useless. "He's awakening." A voice sounded out as the man in the woven rush raincoat appeared behind Zhou Xuanji. He sighed. "Now you should understand." Zhou Xuanji's brows did not relax. Under his gaze, Xiao Jinghong's eyes turned pitch black, and his pupils could not be seen. An evil energy emanated from Xiao Jinghong's body. The man in the woven rush raincoat spoke again. "He is the descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline. I hope you know what to do. Zhou Xuanji was silent. Xiao Jinghong was no longer trembling. He slowly stood up with a dazed expression. He asked in a trembling voice, I'm the descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline? He could feel an immense power surging within his body. It fascinated him, but it also terrified him. He had heard of the legends of the demonic emperor bloodline. Zhou Xuanji also revealed that the northern wilderness humans faced a disaster because of the demonic emperor. He had always been righteous and did not want to become an evil demon. Zhou Xuanji got up and looked at the man in the woven rush raincoat. What will happen to him? Xiao Jinghong was his only disciple. Their relationship was incomparable to the other sword slaves, so he would not allow Xiao Jinghong to die. Chapter 409. He will be devoured by the demonic emperor's power and desires, and his personality will change greatly, becoming a temperamental and bloodthirsty person. The man in the raincoat sighed. He had seen more than one descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline, and all of them were people who had harmed the world. Although they had all been killed in the end, the sins they had committed were far too great. Xiao Jinghong heard him, and immediately drew his sword. He was about to commit suicide, but Zhou Xuanji stopped him. Are you an idiot? Zhou Xuanji glared at him and cursed. I don't want to make things difficult for you. Xiao Jinghong bitterly smiled. He understood Zhou Xuanji. Although Zhou Xuanji had the heart to save the world, he was more loyal to his friends. Between the common people and the people around him, Zhou Xuanji would definitely choose the latter. The man in the raincoat advised, don't take any chances. The demonic emperor bloodline is extremely dangerous. Zhou Xuanji snorted coldly and said, the human heart is more powerful than power. Humans fall easily, and it cannot be covered up with power. Xiao Jinghong fell into deep thought. The man in the raincoat was silent. Zhou Xuanji looked at the man in the woven rush raincoat and asked, you came to find me for this? The man in the raincoat shook his head and said, Marquis and Ji Xian have disappeared. Xiao Hongjun has found the tomb of great Emperor Wu Wang, but his heart has been stolen. Even the purple demon palace has been recognized by someone. Xiao Hongjun is filled with rage, and will probably do something extreme. Zhou Xuanji's pupils contracted. Violet Demon Palace? Could it be that Emperor Wu Wang's heart was the Violet Demon Monarch's heart? Xiao Jinghong glanced at Zhou Xuanji without leaving any trace. They knew of the Violet Demon Palace, but they did not know of the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. Zhou Xuanji asked in curiosity, Great Emperor Wu Wang's heart? How could it be preserved for so long? He had heard from Emperor Hanlin that the Violet Demon Monarch's heart was a creation of the heavens and earth. How could it be the heart of Great Emperor Wu Wang? The man in the woven rush raincoat replied, that heart did not belong to Great Emperor Wu Wang himself. It was a creation of the heavens and earth, and its name was the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. Whoever obtained it would have the potential to become a great emperor. After Great Emperor Wu Wang obtained it, the legend of the Violet Demon Monarch's heart was also erased, and no one knew of it. So that was how it was. No wonder I was able to become a great emperor. Zhou Xuanji came to a realization. The people of the northern wilderness could not become great emperors, so Yang Di could not. The reason why he could do so was because of the transformation of the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. In other words, it was very likely that Xiao Hongjun would find him. Zhou Xuanji put on an act and smiled as he said, then help me find out where the Violet Demon Monarch's heart is. With it, can I create another great Emperor Wu Wang? The man in the raincoat was speechless. After a while he finally said, you really are greedy. Zhou Xuanji's talent was not inferior to great Emperor Wu Wang's, and it might even surpass him. After that, the man in the woven rush raincoat left to help Zhou Xuanji find the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. He would never have guessed that the Violet Demon Monarch's heart was in Zhou Xuanji's body. Zhou Xuanji brought Xiao Jinghong to the top of the mountain and gathered all his trusted subordinates. He told them about Xiao Jinghong's awakening. He hoped that their team would be able to remain honest and tell them about the dangers beforehand. As for their trump cards and abilities, they would tell them if they wanted to. If they didn't, it would be a surprise in the future. Everyone was shocked when they found out. Chen Bantian said excitedly, Brother Xiao, this is incredible. You are actually the inheritor of the demonic emperor bloodline. In the future, you will have a chance to chase after our 10,000-year princes." The little black snake felt incredibly jealous and said, "I also want to awaken. The heavens are unfair." Everyone else also spoke, all of them joking good-naturedly. Of course, there were also people who were pleasantly surprised. The inheritor of the demonic emperor bloodline's talent was not inferior to the 10,000-year princes, and it might even be stronger. Xiao Jinghong felt a warmth in his heart. Meng Tianlang wrapped his arm around his neck and chuckled as he said, "Be careful in the future. I have to follow you wherever you go, or else some evil people might use you and trick you into becoming a demon." Zhou Xuanji had told them many stories, and there were many scenes like this. Xiao Jinghong said grumpily, "I feel like you're more easily tricked." Zhou Xiaoxian hugged Zhou Xuanji and giggled as she said, "Dad, did you let me inherit a special power? Isn't your talent unparalleled in both ancient and modern times?" Zhou Xuanji nodded and said mysteriously, "You know about the Heavenly Emperor, right? He's the master of all gods and is supreme. In actuality, I was the Heavenly Emperor in my previous life, and the constitution I left behind is called the Heavenly Emperor Divine Constitution. It's incredibly domineering," he started to boast, causing Zhou Xiaoshuan's eyes to see stars. Jiang Shui could not help but interrupt him. "Don't listen to your dad's boasting. Don't you know how good he is at making up stories?" Zhou Xiaoxian did not believe him and snorted, "Dad's bloodline must be very powerful. At least it evolved in his generation." A purple radiance flashed in the depth of her eyes. Other than Zhou Xuanji, no one else noticed it. This girl, Zhou Xuanji sighed in his heart, and his pride was written all over his face. It was as though a giant had stepped on it, creating a huge splash. Chapter 410. Behind the huge wave, Xiao Hongjun floated in the air, surrounded by countless blood bats. She looked down. A bottomless abyss. The waves flowed outwards, forming this kind of abyss. Its diameter was incalculable, and so was its depth. At the bottom of the sea, a palace stood quietly. It was the Violet Demon Palace. Demon Lord Sanhai stood at the door and raised his head to look at Xiao Hongjun. With a menacing expression, he let out a deep roar. Xiao Hongjun's eyes were cold and filled with anger. She had personally descended to the mortal realm for the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. Now that the northern wilderness region was isolated by the heavenly law, she could not return and could not find the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. She was in a terrible mood. This time, she planned to vacate the Violet Demon Palace and release the restrictions inside to attract the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. But she found that the Violet Demon Palace was very stable. It seems like there is something suppressed under the Violet Demon Palace. Xiao Hongjun seemed to be deep in thought. She did not stop absorbing the magical power. She was already at her wit's end, so she didn't care about the flood. Boom! A figure broke through the waves. It was the heavenly schemer. He came in front of Xiao Hongjun and frowned. "What are you doing?" Xiao Hongjun ignored him. The two of them could be said to be in the same boat. They couldn't even find the target they were looking for, so they were all very depressed. "You and I are in a very dangerous situation, so don't do anything rash. Zhou Xuanji, Devil Emperor Dugu, Marquis, and Great Emperor Heartless might all be looking for us." Lord of Heavenly Schemer said with a frown as his right hand gripped the folding fan tightly. Ever since he saw the majestic scene of Zhou Xuanji breaking the sky with a single sword strike, he had been feeling very uneasy, because he understood that he was no match for Zhou Xuanji now. Xiao Hongjun laughed disdainfully. "So what? You might be afraid, but I'm not." With that, she continued to raise the Violet Demon Palace. Rumble. The Violet Demon Palace trembled and seemed to be about to leave the ground. Lord of Heaven Schemer's expression was ugly, and his eyes flashed with anger. "This woman is really stupid." He immediately turned around and left. Devil Emperor Dugu arrived not long after he left. Devil Emperor Dugu was clad in a black robe embroidered with dragons. His figure was domineering, and his face was dignified. He looked like a supreme emperor who controlled the life and death of all living beings in the world. "Xiao Hongjun, this is the northern wilderness region. If you continue to act recklessly, I won't go easy on you. Your father can't control this. Devil Emperor Dugu said coldly with killing intent in his eyes. Xiao Hongjun was beautiful, but if she angered him, he would not show any mercy. There were many women who had died in his hands. Xiao Hongjun glanced at him and said disdainfully, "A worm defeated by the divine cliff dares to be so arrogant? When you knelt before my father to seek knowledge, were you ever this arrogant?" The corner of Devil Emperor Duga's mouth curled up. Without a word, he made his move. He waved his right palm, and the demonic chi turned into a huge demonic claw that blotted out the sky and smashed towards Xiao Hongjun. Xiao Hongjun attacked as well. The surrounding blood bats shrieked as they grew larger and collided with the demonic claws. A great battle had officially broken out. Meanwhile, at the top of a massive wave, Zhou Xuanji stood in the air and looked at the Violet Demon Palace. The closer he got to Violet Demon Palace, the more he could feel Demon Marshal Sanhai's emotions. It was angry and begging him for help. Zhou Xuanji's body shook and came to the top of Violet Demon Palace. His feet landed on the ground, and the Violet Demon Palace once again landed firmly on the ground. Xiao Hongjun, who was fighting with Devil Emperor Dugu, suddenly looked back at Zhou Xuanji with a savage expression and a murderous aura. This guy dared to stop her. With a loud cry, a long saber that was 15 meters long appeared in her hand. Compared to her body size, it was extremely exaggerated. The blade was half a meter wide, and it looked like a blood-red fang at first glance. "All ghosts, listen to my command." She held the saber with both hands and roared softly. Devil Emperor Duga's eyelids twitched. He waved his sleeves, and the demonic chi turned into a tornado that wrapped around his body. Boom! A bloody hole with a diameter of a few thousand meters appeared in the sky suddenly. Lightning intertwined, and the sky darkened instantly. Zhou Xuanji looked up and was shocked in his heart. This move was very similar to his Hades god-slaying formation. Countless blood ghosts charged out from the bloody hole like an army of locusts. They covered the sky and ground with great momentum. Each of them had a sharp weapon in their hand, and they rained down like a bloody storm. Xiao Hongjun charged toward Zhou Xuanji with her saber. Zhou Xuanji activated the primordial chaos sword shadow. Millions of sword shadows soared up and blocked her attack instantly. He already had the cultivation of a seventh tribulation scattered immortal. Even if he did not borrow the power of the world, he could still defeat all great tribulation scattered immortals. His black robe fluttered, and Zhou Xuanji's smile was so condescending that Xiao Hongjun almost exploded in anger. A mere mortal dared to mock her. She immediately unleashed her full power. Her entire body was enveloped in blood chi. At first glance, she seemed to have turned into a gigantic blood bat. She broke through the countless sword shadows and headed straight for Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji raised his hand, and the dog-culling sword appeared in his hand. Sky-dominating divine sword soul. Sword light flashed. Puff! Xiao Hongjun spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backward. He quickly fell into the huge wave, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Zhou Xuanji had used the power of the heavens and earth in this strike, but it did not shatter her body, which made him feel quite surprised. Devil Emperor Dugu was still fighting with the Blood Ghost army. Zhou Xuanji did not help but looked down instead. He could feel a terrifying presence hidden under the Violet Demon Palace. It seemed to be suppressing something. He immediately used his divine telekinesis to scan the underground of the Violet Demon Palace. It was a terrifying darkness. In the depths of the darkness, there was a pair of blood-red eyes, filled with resentment and anger. He retracted his divine sense and muttered to himself, "What was that? Although his aura is weak, it gives me a sense of danger." He did not make a move. To him, he needed to leave the northern wilderness region in danger. The growth of an expert did not depend on bitter cultivation. The Great Tribulation was also an important factor. He would let this existence live. If he threatened the northern wilderness region in the future, he would let the future generations deal with him. Zhou Xuanji, you and I are absolutely irreconcilable. Just you wait. Xiao Hongjuan's voice resounded across the heavens and earth, but she was nowhere to be seen. Zhou Xuanji did not take it to heart. Xiao Hongjun could not threaten him. unless the power behind her could descend upon the northern wilderness region. A while later, Devil Emperor Dugu dealt with the Blood Ghost army and landed before Zhou Xuanji. I feel that it's very difficult for me to take another step forward. Zhou Xuanji spoke first. Ever since the Great Tribulation, he had been cultivating, but it was very difficult for him to progress further. The spiritual qi in the world was already very weak to him. Devil Emperor Dugu nodded and said, "Of course. Or else, why would so many people ascend? The spiritual qi in the mortal realm is lower than in the upper realm. Back then, Lu Wuji only ascended after reaching 7th tribulation scattered immortal. You are about the same as him, standing at the pinnacle of the ascension stage. If you ascend now and pass the ascension tribulation, you will at least attain the cultivation of a 3rd revolution golden immortal." This was ascension, like a carp leaping over the dragon's gate. Zhou Xuanji muttered, "I want to ascend. If this continues, I might not surpass Great Tribulation scattered immortal in 50,000 years." Devil Emperor Dugu pondered with a frown. A while later, "Go ahead," he said. "I will take care of Emperor Sword Court." The northern wilderness region was isolated by the heavenly law and could not ascend. But he believed that Zhou Xuanji had other ways, or else he would not have mentioned this. Chapter 411. After saying goodbye to Devil Emperor Dugu, Zhou Xuanji entered the Violet Demon Palace alone. Demon Lord Sanhai followed behind him like a servant. When he came to Violet Demon Palace, he had not observed it carefully. This time, he wanted to understand the Violet Demon Palace. He took out the ancient god sword, and the souls of the 9 great beings appeared. "Why did you come back?" Emperor Hanlin asked. The moment he said it, he regretted it. Now Zhou Xuanji was invincible in the human world. The northern wilderness region was so vast that he could go wherever he wanted. Zhou Xuanji told them about Xiao Hongjun, causing the souls to discuss among themselves. TSK, as expected, someone is looking for the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. This is a creation of heaven and earth. You must not expose it. The Violet Yao Palace is also a magic treasure. You can accept it, but it won't be of much use to you. Besides, there is a fiendish being suppressed beneath the Violet Yao Palace. That is an existence that even Grand Emperor Wu Wang would have a headache over. What evil creature? Dark North Royal Taohai. Zhou Xuanji listened to their conversation as he walked. Soon, he understood the identity of the being suppressed below. The Dark North Royal Tao was an ancient evil creature that had once slaughtered the northern wilderness region and beyond. It had been suppressed by Great Emperor Wu Wang and 100 demon kings. Zhou Xuanji had heard of this evil creature before. It often appeared in many legends and represented inauspiciousness and massacre. According to the soul of the great being, the Dark North Royal Tao was indestructible. Even if it was killed, it would be reborn. This was also the reason why Great Emperor Wu Wang had suppressed it. After that, Zhou Xuanji turned his attention to the Violet Demon Palace. Violet Demon Palace had hundreds of side halls, thousands of rooms, and many treasures were hidden there. To him, these treasures were not important treasures, but he wanted to obtain some ancient information. He released old Mother Wanyi's soul. She was quite a pitiful person, but she had already become an evil being. Zhou Xuanji decided to leave her in the Violet Demon Palace. After he ascended and left the northern wilderness region, if old Mother Wanyi followed him, she would definitely die. 3 days later, Zhou Xuanji left the Violet Demon Palace. He had collected many ancient books in the Violet Demon Palace, and he stored them all in the supreme storage. Perhaps he could use them in the future. The ocean had recovered, and the Violet Demon Palace continued to sink to the bottom of the sea. After returning to Skyfall, Zhou Xuanji gathered everyone and told them that he wanted to ascend. He did not intend to ascend now. Instead, he wanted to spend time nurturing his disciples, and when Emperor Sword Court was strong enough, he would ascend. In the past, he said that he would bring everyone along to ascend, but now he had to go back on his words. Since he could not ascend in the northern wilderness region, he planned to head to the underworld before ascending to the other mortal realms. Everyone had already guessed that he was going to ascend, so they did not have any objections. The little black snake flicked its tongue and chuckled. You're actually willing to part with your wife, right? Jiang Shui smiled proudly, and the others followed suit. Zhou Xiaoxian called out, Hey, what about me? Zhou Xuanji ignored her, and Jiang Shui only smiled and patted his head. Northern Sword Valiant laughed. Don't you have any self-awareness? Zhou Xiaoxian felt sad. After knowing that Zhou Xuanji was going to ascend, everyone worked even harder on their cultivation. Spring passed and autumn came. 10 years passed. Zhou Xuanji reached 89 years old. 10 years had passed, and many geniuses had appeared in Emperor Sword Court. It was even more so in the northern wilderness region. Chen Bantian, Meng Tianlang, and Xiao Jinghong had all broken through to the Mahayana realm. The 10,000-year princes, and the descendants of the demonic emperor bloodline, were indeed powerful. Lin Chang'e had already begun to break through to the Great Tribulation scattered immortal stage, while Ning Zifeng was almost there. Zhao Zongjian was working hard at the spirit refinement stage. Even the weakest Northern Sword Valiant had reached Astral Infant level 5. Jiang Shui's talent was no weaker than Lin Chang'e's and Ning Zifeng's. With the help of the colorful celestial fruit, she broke through to the Great Realization stage too. Huang Lianxin and Zhao Zongjian's cultivation stage were similar, which hurt Zhao Zongjian greatly. Han Shenbo was only slightly stronger than Zhao Zongjian. Chongming Demon Monarch was already an 8th rank great demon. He was lazy and easily slacked off. But the little black snake worked hard to catch up, and had already reached the 7th rank. The second-generation disciples had already reached the astral infant stage, and some had even reached the spirit refinement stage. They were all 1 in a million geniuses in the sword's way. Their overall talent surpassed the third-generation disciples, so naturally they were not weak. The third-generation disciples were mostly at the inner pellet stage, which was already quite good. In these 10 years, Emperor Sword Court's disciples traveled the world and made a name for themselves. Together with the Sword Emperor, Emperor Sword Court was recognized as the most powerful faction in the northern wilderness region. It was just that their foundation was weaker than the sanctums. Zhou Xiaoshuan's cultivation reached Astral Infant level 7. She often left the mountain to train, and earned the title of Myriad Swords Fairy. Zhou Xuanji taught her the primordial chaos sword Shadow. Although she had not reached great accomplishment, she could already create hundreds of sword shadows. Moreover, her father was the world's top cultivator, so the world gave her such an exaggerated title. She was quite proud of this. This day, a guest came to Skyfall. Marquis. This guy was no longer in the form of a shadow but a real person. He wore a red shirt with green threads. He was tall and handsome, and he looked like he was in his early 30s. Zhou Xuanji received him, and Zhou Xiaoxian sized him up curiously. Was this the mighty Marquis of ancient times? It's been more than a decade. Why did you come to me today? Zhou Xuanji poured him a cup of wine and asked with a smile. Marquis swirled the wine cup and said, It's time for you to ascend. Worry was written all over his face, and he seemed to have a lot on his mind. Why? Zhou Xuanji asked. Zhou Xiaoxian, on the other hand, became excited. Could another great tribulation be coming? Marquis replied honestly. It turned out that his original body appeared in his dream, and told him that many true gods were searching for the northern wilderness region. Once they found it, the true gods would destroy the northern wilderness region straight away. At that time, Zhou Xuanji would not be facing great tribulation scattered immortals, but true gods who were not restricted by the heavenly law. No matter how talented he was, he could not withstand a palm strike from a true god. Zhou Xuanji could not help but remember the mysterious powerful cultivator, who almost killed him with a palm strike when he returned from the netherworld. Could that person be a true god too? It's not convenient for my original body to confront the true gods. Devil Emperor Dugu offended the divine cliff, so the northern wilderness region can only rely on you. Marquis said solemnly. Zhou Xuanji was disgusted by this. Your original body is not convenient, so you push the trouble to me? He suddenly felt that Marquis was a hypocrite. Marquis sensed his displeasure and explained, My original body is in isolation above the 36th heaven. There are even more powerful beings watching over him. At his cultivation level, he might be in isolation for tens of thousands of years. Zhou Xuanji's mood improved a little. He said, "After I leave, how will I know when the northern wilderness region will be in danger?" Marquis took out a white jade pendant and said, "This is a spirit communication heart. If you want to understand the situation in the northern wilderness region, you can use it. Remember, you cannot lose this jade pendant, or else the enemy might use it to find the northern wilderness region." Zhou Xuanji took the jade pendant and agreed. After Marquis left, he gathered the elders together. This matter was extremely important. Emperor Sword Court's millions of disciples were in the northern wilderness region and could not leave. He had to become more powerful. Daoseeker suddenly appeared and said, "Don't ascend." He looked anxious, and everyone looked at him. Chapter 412. Why? You're afraid that after Zhou Xuanji leaves, no one will protect the northern wilderness region? Daoya old man asked mockingly, and the others laughed in disdain. Tribulation executives looked powerful, but they were actually useless. They even suspected that Daoseeker and the man in the woven rush raincoat had some unspeakable secrets. Daoseeker ignored everyone and stared at Zhou Xuanji. "You defeated so many heavenly law puppets," he said. "I'm afraid that the ancestors are already holding a grudge against you. If you ascend, you will be in great danger. Many enemies might be waiting for you to ascend." The group heard him and fell into deep thought. The more powerful one's cultivation was, the more they cared about their reputation. Although Zhou Xuanji did it to protect the northern wilderness humans, he did humiliate so many ancestors. Putting themselves in their shoes, they would not feel uncomfortable about it, but they would not hold a grudge against him. The little black snake cried out, "Are they that petty?" Daoseeker sighed. "One must always be on guard against others." He had seen countless powerful cultivators and knew that some of them were petty. Zhou Xuanji waved his hand and said, "I will die even if I stay. Why not take the risk?" Daoseeker wanted to say more, but seeing how determined Zhou Xuanji was, he could only give up. But Zhou Xuanji remembered his words in his heart. What Zhou Xuanji could think of, those powerful cultivators could think of too. After Daoseeker left, Zhou Xuanji held Jiang Shue's hand and said, "Come with me." He said that he must bring Jiang Shui along no matter where he went. He was worried about her staying in the northern wilderness region. Zhou Shaoxian opened her eyes wide and cried out, "Hey Dad, what about me?" Zhou Xuanji said unpleasantly, "Get lost." Zhou Shaoxian was furious and stomped her feet. She grabbed the little black snake and dashed to a nearby tree. She whipped the tree to vent her frustration. "I won't follow you so that I won't be a burden to you. I'll stay and look after Emperor Sword Court for you," Jiang Shui said as she shook her head. She felt warmth in her heart. No matter how long it had been, he would always think of her first. She was very regretful and reluctant to leave. It had been 10 years. She had been working hard to catch up to Zhou Xuanji, but the time was too short. Zhou Xuanji said, "I can ask Magistrate Cui to give you a great spirit pill to help you increase your cultivation." The beauty in front of him was the person closest to him, and no one in the world could compare to her. He didn't know how long it would take for him to return, so he naturally wanted to bring her along. Jiang Shui pinched his face and smiled. "If I follow you, I will definitely become a burden to you. When my cultivation level increases, I will ascend alone. At that time, the upper realm won't know about our relationship, so you won't have so much trouble." Zhou Xuanji threw her a stare and snorted, "I won't allow you to ascend alone. Either you come with me, or you stay at Skyfall, and wait for me to come back for you to ascend." Jiang Shui smiled sweetly. The others tactfully left, leaving them alone. Daoya old man put his hands behind his back, shook his head and sighed. It's just love. He remembered that dusk that year. He also had a beautiful woman by his side. Unfortunately, she had already turned into dust. Zhou Xuanji spent 3 days making arrangements for his funeral. That night, he took advantage of the darkness to leave. After the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, he arrived at a desolate plain. He directly used the 9 underworlds flame extinction, created a yin-yang boundary, and entered it. He quickly disappeared into the darkness. After he left, Xian Daoya suddenly appeared at the edge of the black hole and looked down. His face was cold and stern, without the frivolous smile he had before. Zhou Xuanji, who are you? With the fate I gave you, you could not have reached such a devilish stage. Where did your swords come from? It seems like you are no longer a pure chess piece, he mumbled to himself. His eyes flickered with a sinister aura. After that, he leaped into the yin-yang boundary. After passing through the boundless darkness, Zhou Xuanji felt the world spinning. When he opened his eyes again, he landed. After becoming a great emperor, he could already withstand the pressure of traveling between the yin and yang. The netherworld was still as dark and lifeless as before. Everywhere was eerie and horrifying. He flew toward the magistrate palace straight away. Along the way, he met many impermanences, who looked at him with admiration. So many people died in the northern wilderness region. Through the souls, they understood Zhou Xuanji's prowess and achievements. It was not an exaggeration to say that Zhou Xuanji surpassed both ancient and modern times. Half an hour later, Zhou Xuanji came to the magistrate palace and did not stop him. After entering, he saw Magistrate Cui, who was busy. At this moment, 2 impermanences were escorting 6 ghosts, telling them about the good and evil they had done in their lives. When Zhou Xuanji came in, they looked back. The 6 ghosts became excited immediately. Sword Emperor. Could it be that the Sword Emperor is here to save us? Bullsh *T. Coming down to the netherworld to save us? Who do you think we are? Could it be that he died too? Impossible. The Sword Emperor was invincible throughout his life. It's impossible for him to die. Zhou Xuanji was quite amused. He had met 6 fanboys. He walked past the impermanences and came to the magistrate palace. Magistrate, long time no see, he said with a smile. Magistrate Cui said with a smile. Not really. But your power makes me feel like I'm reunited with you after a long time. The 6 ghosts opened their eyes wide in shock. Awesome. The Sword Emperor knew Magistrate Cui. Judging from their conversation, their relationship was not shallow. Eating both the yin and yang realms? Zhou Xuanji walked to the side and said, You handle this first. I need your help. Magistrate Cui nodded, and the 6 ghosts admired him even more. It was incredible that he could ask Magistrate Cui for help. Immediately, they were no longer fearful but excited. With the Sword Emperor beside them, they did not dare to embarrass themselves. All of them puffed out their chests and raised their heads proudly. Finally, they were taken away by the 2 impermanences with arrogant faces. Zhou Xuanji explained his purpose of coming. He wanted to ascend to another mortal realm. As for going to the upper realm directly, he did not even think about it. Because the ascension tribulation was between the upper realm and the mortal realm, he did not want to miss the opportunity to grow tremendously. Magistrate Cui put down his brush and said intently, Recently, many people want to go to the northern wilderness region through the netherworld. If I send you out, you will be easily exposed. How about this? I will let you reincarnate. Don't you have a rebirth energy technique that can recover your cultivation in a short time? Zhou Xuanji asked with narrowed eyes. How do you know? At the same time, he was shocked in his heart. So many powerful cultivators wanted to enter the netherworld, but did not succeed. This meant that Magistrate Cui was very powerful. Magistrate Cui waved his right hand, and Xian Xianghua appeared in the palace suddenly. Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes wide and said in astonishment, Why are you here? Xian Xianghua curled her lip and said, I want to ascend too. We have the same idea. The celestial devil rebirth technique could preserve one's original bloodline and even make it purer. After each rebirth, one's talent would grow stronger and stronger. As for the original body, it would turn into ashes quickly without leaving any trace. This energy technique was extremely domineering. Zhou Xuanji had already reached the 4th level, and he had 3 more rebirths. If not for her relationship with you, I might have already sent her to the 18th level of hell. Magistrate Cui chuckled. He looked forward to Zhou Xuanji more and more, so he did him a favor. Zhou Xuanji expressed his gratitude first before chatting with Xian Xianghua. The 2 decided to ascend to different mortal realms. Zhou Xuanji had too much hatred for her after all, and he did not want to implicate her. Xian Xianghua understood that she would only be a burden if she followed him. An hour later, under Magistrate Chui's lead, they came to the Bridge of Helplessness. Chapter 413. The Bridge of Helplessness was situated above the Yellow Springs. The waters of the Yellow Springs were turbid, and in the dusky world of thunderclouds, it was like a boundless black sea. It was Zhou Xuanji's first time coming to the Bridge of Helplessness. He was very curious, and he continuously scanned his surroundings with his divine sense. Xian Xianghua was also very curious and looked around. Magistrate Chui walked to the front and suddenly stopped. He turned around and said with a smile, "Which one of you will go down first? I will use my arcane energy to protect your corporeal body, so that you won't be attacked by the reincarnation force. When your bodies are about to give out, you can use the celestial devil rebirth technique." Xian Xianghua and Zhou Xuanji looked at each other. She took a step forward and walked to the side of the bridge. The Bridge of Helplessness was a stone bridge that even mortals could jump off easily. Xian Xianghua looked back at Zhou Xuanji. Her eyes were filled with tenderness, reluctance, and expectation. "When we reach the upper realm, I will look for you," she said softly, her tone firm. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and said, "Wait for me to find you. When I'm powerful enough, I will find you. Of course, if you are in danger, you can ask me for help." Xian Xianghua rolled her eyes at him and said coquettishly, "Don't expect me to save you when the time comes." After that, she jumped into the Yellow Springs without hesitation. Magistrate Chui immediately began to cast the spell. Zhou Xuanji waited quietly, but in his heart, he was imagining what the upper realm would be like. In these 10 years, he had obtained another 17 divine swords. The highest was only at the heavenly soul level, while the lowest was at the amethyst level. To him, they weren't considered very strong, but they weren't considered weak either. His overall strength did not improve much. Hopefully, the ascension wouldn't disappoint him. Magistrate Chui turned to look at Zhou Xuanji and said, "You have offended too many people. After you reach the upper realm, you better go and find the 18 swords of the divine way." 18 swords of the saint way? Zhou Xuanji looked curious. What was that? The 18 divine swords are the 18 divine swords of the upper realm, at the beginning of the world's creation. Each of them contains the power to split the heavens and the earth, and they are fought over by countless sword immortals. If you can get your hands on one of them, you will be able to do whatever you want and not be afraid of the true gods. Although your talent is strong, the enemy won't give you too much time. The holy sword can help you grow stronger quickly. That's all I can help you with. Magistrate Chui introduced, his eyes full of expectation. Zhou Xuanji's situation seemed to be a dead end, but if he could survive it, it was hard to imagine how great his future achievements would be. "If I manage to ascend to the heavens in the future, I will not let you down," Zhou Xuanji said as he lightly laughed. He seemed to be joking, but Magistrate Chui could sense his sincerity. After that, Magistrate Chui gave him a few more instructions before letting him jump into the Yellow Spring. After entering the Yellow Springs, Zhou Xuanji felt as if he was traversing between the yin and yang. It was pitch black all around him, and he could not even see his fingers. Even his senses and divine sense were rendered useless. Very quickly, he felt a strong magical power wrap around him, causing him to sink rapidly. Zhou Xuanji was a little nervous. After all, it was his first time reincarnating while maintaining his consciousness. Not long after, a terrifying force came, wanting to tear his body apart. He immediately used the celestial devil rebirth technique and began his rebirth. After successfully circulating his energy, he lost consciousness. The Bridge of Helplessness. Magistrate Chui gazed at the Yellow Spring for a long time and didn't leave. After an unknown period of time, a figure walked over from the other end of the Bridge of Helplessness. It was Xian Daoya. He walked to the side of Magistrate Chui and looked at the surging Yellow Spring side by side with him. "How is it? Can you divine his true background?" Xian Daoya asked with a solemn expression. He changed Zhou Xuanji's fate personally, but he lost control in less than 100 years. This made him feel uneasy. "I can't divine it," Magistrate Chui replied calmly. Xian Daoya glanced at him and laughed coldly. Why? Are you moved? Let me give you a piece of advice. Look at your position clearly. Magistrate Chui was not enraged. He turned around and left. Xian Daoya continued. The ninth Nether Buddha isn't here. Grasp this opportunity well. As long as Zhou Xuanji becomes a true god, or even surpasses true god, he will help you soar. I hope you can help him as much as you can and satisfy all of his requests. Don't tell anyone about us. After that he disappeared into thin air. Magistrate Chui did not stop. He walked ahead with his head lowered, and his face turned grim. Xian Daoya. Although I don't know what you want, do you really think you can do whatever you want? You miscalculated one step, and that is Zhou Xuanji's will. A chess piece can also retaliate against its player. He smiled as he thought in his heart. Sunlight shone on his face, and Zhou Xuanji felt warmth on his face. He opened his eyes slowly, and realized that he was lying on the grass. Behind him was a slope, so he could see the majestic mountains and rivers in front of him, just by looking down slightly. At this moment he had already turned into a baby. Naked he enjoyed the gentle breeze. The spiritual chi here is not bad. It's almost as good as the foot of Skyfall. He thought to himself as he spread out his divine sense. Soon he saw a white snake charging toward him. The white snake was very thin, and as thick as his arm. Demonic chi? Wow, it has the cultivation of 7th rank. Zhou Xuanji thought to himself curiously. It was hard for anyone to associate such a small snake with a 7th rank demon. The white snake came up to him and arched its body. It flicked its forked tongue at him, and sized him up with its clear and lively eyes. He immediately put his acting skills to good use and cried. The white snake wrapped its body around his body. A cold female voice came from its mouth. A genius from the heavens. Little guy, where did you come from? After that, it dragged Zhou Xuanji away. From beginning to end, Zhou Xuanji did not resist. If the white snake wanted to kill him, he could kill it instantly. A 7th rank demon could not even withstand his divine sense. An hour later, the white snake brought him to a cave. There were many bones in the cave, all of which belonged to wild beasts and demons. There was also a small lake in the depths of the cave. After the white snake put him down, it walked toward the small lake and began drinking water. Zhou Xuanji was curious. What was the white snake going to do to him? After becoming a great emperor, he only needed 2 years to recover to his peak state. Bai Hao Yisun seemed to have mastered a similar divine ability. Every time he self-destructed, he could quickly recover his great tribulation scattered immortal cultivation. And so, Zhou Xuanji pretended to be an ordinary baby. The white snake did not harm him, and spent most of its time cultivating. It even channeled spiritual chi into his body to ensure his vitality. Occasionally, it would go out to hunt. Day after day, a month had passed. Zhou Xuanji's body grew a lot, and could already walk on the ground. He pretended to be ignorant, which made the white snake love him even more. He sensed that the white snake had no ill intentions toward him, so he was happy to continue pretending. If the white snake did not harm him before he ascended, he would not mind rewarding it with serendipity. Spring passed and autumn came. Half a year had passed. Zhou Xuanji reached 90 years old. Analyzed that the sword owner has reached 90 years old. Gotcha started. Ding. Congratulations, the sword owner obtained. Intimidating Spirit Immortal Disruption Sword. A bottle of age-halting pills. And a dragon essence pill. Zhou Xuanji, who was sleeping, opened his sleepy eyes. Chapter 414. Sword Name. Immortal Chaotic Stellar Sword Grade. Intimidating Spirit Description. Created by the Heaven and Earth Astral Flame. It contains the power to disrupt the will of the immortal god. The effect is related to the enemy's cultivation level. Disturb the immortal god will? Could he do it with just the intimidating spirit sword? Zhou Xuanji was a little doubtful. But after thinking about it, the intimidating spirit legendary sword was not weak. It was impossible for immortals and gods to be very strong. He grinned, rolled over, and went back to sleep. He had drawn more than 10 bottles of age-retaining pills, most of which he had given to Zhou Shaoxian. As for dragon essence pills, he had drawn them before. The true dragon Yuan was suitable for cultivation. If the snake species swallowed it, there was a chance that it would transform into a dragon. He glanced at the white snake who was breathing not far away, and wondered if he should give it the dragon essence pill. Forget it. Let's continue watching its performance. Ever since he was reborn into this mortal world, he had never cultivated. Every day, he would doze off and comprehend the power of heaven and earth. Occasionally, powerful monsters would attack the cave, but they were all dealt with by the white snake. He looked about 5 or 6 years old, and was wearing clothes made of animal skin. The white snake was very surprised by his growth, but seeing that he was harmless, she was not afraid. Time continued to pass. 3 months later, he was woken up by the white snake. He looked at the white snake with resentment and an unhappy expression. The white snake blinked her pure eyes and asked, "Are you from the upper realm?" Zhou Xuanji was stunned. It said to itself, "Stop pretending. You're not immortal. Although you don't cultivate, you're very strong. If we fight, I'll be the one to die. I mean no harm. I'm actually from the upper realm too." It began to talk endlessly, making Zhou Xuanji stupefied. Holy shit. So the one who pretended to be a pig to eat the tiger wasn't me, but you. The white snake came from the upper realm and belonged to the 9 heavens divine snake clan. They fed on dragons and phoenixes and were extremely powerful. The 9 heavens godly snakes had 9 chances to undergo nirvana, which was similar to the celestial devil rebirth art. Every time they underwent nirvana, they would be sent to the mortal world by the elders of their race. This was because they were at their weakest during nirvana, and the mortal world was the safest. This white snake's name was Baisuan. This was her first time descending to the mortal world to transform. It had sharp senses and could sense that Zhou Xuanji's aura did not belong to this world. After spending more than half a year with Zhou Xuanji, it had grown to like Zhou Xuanji a lot. This time, it could not help but tell the truth. "Your name is Baisuan? What's your relationship with Baisuzhen?" Zhou Xuanji asked with his eyes wide open. As for the 9 heaven divine snake, it was his first time hearing that it ate dragons and phoenixes. What a braggart. He couldn't help but think even more. Why was the place of his rebirth so close to Baisuan? Could it be that Magistrate Cui had deliberately arranged this? Baisuan blinked her eyes and said, "I have an elder sister called Baisuzhen. How did you know?" Zhou Xuanji asked closely, "Your brother-in-law is called Su Xian?" Baisuan glared at him and said snappily, "My sister is only a few years older than me. What brother-in-law? But my 7th sister, Baisusu, is already married." Zhou Xuanji was confused. So many Baisu? Could Baisu be the same surname? He started asking all kinds of questions. Baisuan told him everything she knew. She looked very innocent. Baisuan was also very interested in him, and asked where he came from. Zhou Xuanji lied that he came from Earth, and was a cultivator during the Age of Chaos. Earth was not suitable for ascension, so he brought the hopes of the entire world to shatter the void and reincarnate into another mortal realm to ascend. Hearing that he was going to ascend, Baisuan was excited. "Little Xuanji, why don't you ascend with me? We, the 9 heaven divine snake, have to go through the tribulation of ascension every time after nirvana. I'm afraid. Come with me," she said excitedly. After spending so much time with Zhou Xuanji and watching him grow up, she had already treated him as a younger brother. As for why she was not a son, because her mental age was very young and did not understand maternal love. Is the 9 heaven divine snake clan very powerful? Is it as powerful as the true gods? Is it as powerful as the heavenly hall? Zhou Xuanji asked with curled lips. He did not want to ascend with a burden. Baisuan opened her snake eyes wide and said, "True gods? There are many true gods in my race, all right? My father and my mother are both true gods. As for the Sky Palace, I seem to have seen a sage use something pay a visit to my race in the past. During that period of time, he mentioned the 2 words Sky Palace." This time, it was Zhou Xuanji's turn to open his eyes wide. "So awesome?" He rolled his eyes and chuckled. "Then we will be friends from now on. What do you think?" Baisuan rolled her eyes at him and snorted. "What friend? You are my younger brother. I'm the one who raised you. Why? Did the heavenly hall offend you? If you follow me from now on, the heavenly hall will be nothing. She raised her snake head proudly, as though her life was higher than the sky. Zhou Xuanji was not sure if it was because of the halo or something else, but he suddenly felt that the snake scales on her body were so beautiful and as bright as crystals. Your clan background is not important. I acknowledge you as my friend because of your character. And so, Zhou Xuanji and Bai Siwen became even closer. He began to guide Bai Siwen in her cultivation, which made her progress tremendously. She was overjoyed and liked him even more. The man and the snake rarely left the cave. To prevent any accidents, Zhou Xuanji decided to hide first, in case there were other powerful people hiding in this mortal realm. A year later, analyzed that the sword owner has reached 91 years old. Gotcha started. Ding! Congratulations! The sword owner obtained God-slaying Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss. Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes, which were filled with surprise. The second God-slaying legendary sword. Next, the legendary sword's information appeared before his eyes. Sword name: Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss grade, God-slaying description. A sword that was fused with the body of the Ghost Emperor. It absorbed countless ghosts and opened up the Extreme Abyss. The Extreme Abyss can absorb ghosts and souls. During battle, the souls of ghosts and souls will fuse together to serve the sword owner. One must reach Second Revolution Golden Immortal to use this sword. Second Revolution Golden Immortal. Zhou Xuanji was even more surprised. This meant that the Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss was more powerful than the 9-Flame Chimera Demon Sword. He noticed something. Extreme Abyss, which meant that this sword was the same as the Furious Ape Sword. It could grow infinitely more powerful as long as it absorbed enough ghosts. He was in a good mood. After he ascended, he could use this sword. He turned around and glanced at Bai Siwen, who was still cultivating by the lake. She looked like the little black snake. Her body was only a meter long, which was very small compared to other demonic snakes. Zhou Xuanji looked like he was already 13 or 14 years old, but Bai Siwen still maintained her appearance, which confused him. After that, he continued to sleep. When he reached the upper realm, he could not even sleep. Even if it was late at night, he had to stay alert. Half a year later, Zhou Xuanji and Bai Siwen walked out of the cave and were ready to ascend. He had already recovered his cultivation and was ready to ascend in a secluded place. Bai Siwen was the same. She did not ascend because she was afraid. Finally, she waited for him. The two of them flew toward the same direction. 12 hours later, they came to a barren land. Within a radius of 1,000 miles, not even a blade of grass grew. There was not even a demon, let alone a human. Zhou Xuanji stood in the air and began channeling his magic energy. He was already a first-class great emperor. As long as he had a strong desire to ascend, the heavenly law would sense it. Boom! Thunderclouds gathered, and a violent gale swept across the land. Bai Siwen was so frightened that she held onto Zhou Xuanji's arm tightly. Chapter 4:15. How can you go through the tribulation if you cling to me like this? Zhou Xuanji stared at Bai Siwen and wanted to pull it off. But no matter how hard he tried, he could not pull it off. He could not use his full power, or he would tear it into pieces. I'm scared, Bai Siwen cried out. She clung onto his arm tightly and refused to let go. Zhou Xuanji was helpless. He could only go through the tribulation like this. He took out the thunderclap sword and held it above his head. The thunderclouds rolled violently and covered the entire sky, as though they were going to press down on the ground. A massive heavenly might engulfed the vast wasteland. Thunder rumbled and shook the ground, which made Bai Siwen shiver in fear. The thunderclouds parted, and a majestic thunderclap Buddha statue appeared. It was thousands of meters tall, and looked even more sacred than the sun. Seeing the thunderclap Buddha statue, Bai Siwen opened her snake eyes wide, and her snake body stiffened immediately. She was scared silly. Zhou Xuanji laughed in his heart. Are you scared now? At this moment, the thunderclap Buddha statue slammed its palm toward Zhou Xuanji. Millions of lightning bolts turned into a torrent that destroyed the heavens and the earth. The thunderclap sword blocked the torrent of heavenly lightning. Even so, Zhou Xuanji and Bai Siwen were still struck by the heavenly lightning. Ah! Bai Suwen cried out miserably. Zhou Xuanji withstood it with the toughness of his body. He did not help Bai Suwen. This was the tribulation that she deserved. The heavenly lightning could temper her bloodline. It was a serendipity, and she should not avoid it. Of course, if she could not bear it, he would think of a way. Most of the heavenly lightning was withstood by the thunderclap sword. If it could not even withstand this, he could not help but wonder if the 9-heaven divine snake was really that powerful. Just when he was thinking about it, the dragon and phoenix formed by the heavenly lightning dashed out from the back of the Buddha statue and charged toward Zhou Xuanji and Bai Suwen. The Ascension Tribulation and Nirvana Tribulation came together. Zhou Xuanji's robe was burned, and his skin was charred black. Bai Suwen's flesh was lacerated. Their blood mixed together, and it was hard to tell whose it was. However, his self-healing speed was fast, while Bai Suwen was much slower. She seemed to be in great pain. Boom! 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 The ground was blasted consecutively, and countless cracks appeared. Numerous evil spirits popped up from the ground and tried to attack Zhou Xuanji and Bai Suwen. But they were all killed by the heavenly lightning and could not even get close. Zhou Xuanji laughed. So this was a dangerous place, a place of misfortune. Unfortunately, he wanted to ascend. Not even demons or monsters could stop him. In the distance, there were 3 people standing on top of the mountain. They wore gray robes and bamboo hats, making it impossible to identify their faces. They were tribulation executives of this realm. They had felt the might of the heavens and had come to witness this spectacular scene. What a terrifying heavenly tribulation! He's ascending. He has achieved the martial monarch realm? Wait, who is he? Why haven't I seen it before? The 3 tribulation executives were almost scared to death. They controlled everything in the mortal world, but a great emperor they didn't know suddenly ascended. How could they not panic? Zhou Xuanji was completely focused on the tribulation and did not pay attention to them. Even if he noticed it, he wouldn't care. Tribulation executive? If you can't stand it, come and hit me. After the time it takes to burn half an incense stick. The lightning Buddha descended personally and struck toward Zhou Xuanji with its palm. His imposing figure seemed to be able to sink the earth with a single palm strike. The power of the heavens collapsing was nothing more than this. Zhou Xuanji raised the thunderclap sword and slashed toward the sky dominating divine sword soul. The sword radiance brightened the heavens and earth. The lightning Buddha exploded straightaway and turned into lightning bolts that scattered across the sky. The sky turned into a web of lightning. The scene was so shocking that Bai Suwen and the 3 tribulation executives were tongue-tied. What kind of power is this? Zhou Xuanji followed up with world internalization and universal attraction to absorb the heavenly lightning into the thunderclap sword. Boom! A beam of light descended from the sky and enveloped him and Bai Suwen. In an instant, they felt a warm and comfortable sensation enveloping their bodies. Bai Suwen's injuries healed at a visible speed. The heavenly tribulation had yet to disperse. Heavenly lightning dragons coiled around the beam of light and charged toward them. The dragons' mouths were big enough to swallow a mountain. Zhou Xuanji raised his left hand. Shadows of the primordial chaos sword covered the sky and charged toward the lightning dragons from different directions. The lightning dragons were destroyed one after another, and the explosions sounded ceaselessly. Bai Suwen looked up, and her snake eyes were filled with excitement. She knew that Zhou Xuanji was powerful, but she did not expect him to be this powerful. She made the right choice to recognize this little brother. Far away, the 3 tribulation executives were silent. Zhou Xuanji's prowess shocked their knowledge. In their memory, there had never been such a powerful being in the world. Even those powerful great emperors did not have such power before they ascended. They felt that the heavenly tribulation was like child's play before Zhou Xuanji. At this moment, Zhou Xuanji and Bai Suwen felt a suction force pulling them upward. A wave of energy descended from the sky and entered Zhou Xuanji's body. His cultivation began to grow tremendously. Bai Suwen opened her snake eyes wide. Her snake body was separated from Zhou Xuanji uncontrollably, and they were 2 meters apart. The heavenly law did not allow her to share the great emperor's grace. But soon, she received the grace that belonged to her. and her cultivation began to grow tremendously. Boom! Zhou Xuanji broke through to 8th tribulation scattered immortal. His magic energy was as vast and boundless as the ocean. His divine sense grew stronger too. Or more accurately, his soul. The heavenly tribulation continued. As he grew more powerful, he underwent the tribulation at the same time. The thunderclap sword welcomed the feast and devoured the heavenly lightning crazily. When Zhou Xuanji rose to a height of 1,500 meters, he broke through to 9th tribulation scattered immortal. Bai Siwen became a great tribulation scattered immortal straightaway. From a 7th rank great demon to a 1st tribulation scattered immortal, Zhou Xuanji believed its words suddenly. The 9 heaven divine snake was not boasting. It was really powerful. After a few thousand meters, Zhou Xuanji broke through to 1st revolution golden immortal forcefully. Everything in his body transformed. Analyzed that the sword owner has reached heavenly revolution golden immortal. Gotcha started. Ding! Congratulations. The sword owner obtained gold evil scarlet sword. Armageddon all evil yin yang destruction. Ding! The sword owner obtained the Armageddon legendary sword. Updating the legendary sword's information. The sword spirit's voice resounded in Zhou Xuanji's mind, which made him open his eyes wide. What the? Armageddon! 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 He must roar 3 times in his heart. The god-slaying legendary sword was so powerful that it could even slash the heavens. How powerful would the Armageddon be? At this moment, the blood in his body began to boil. Because he was in the beam of light, and his cultivation was still breaking through, he could not check the legendary sword's information. But he was not in a hurry. The thunderclap sword continued to absorb the heavenly lightning. Zhou Xuanji and Bai Siwen disappeared into the clouds. The 3 tribulation executives came back to their senses and looked at each other in dismay. They could see the shock and relief in each other's eyes. They were shocked by Zhou Xuanji's power. They were glad that Zhou Xuanji had left. God bless our world. One of the tribulation executives sighed in amazement, and the other 2 nodded in agreement. After disappearing into the thunderclouds, Zhou Xuanji and Bai Siwen were still ascending. The heavenly grace continued. Zhou Xuanji could sense that his magic energy was growing at a horrifying rate. Bai Siwen was the same. This guy had already reached 2nd tribulation scattered immortal. The 9 heaven divine snake's talent was really unreasonable. Roar! A roar came from above and they looked up in shock. Above the layers of thunderclouds, a pair of eyes stared at them furiously. It was like the eyes of the heavenly law, gigantic and filled with divine might. Bai Siwen's cultivation began to slow down, but Zhou Xuanji was still growing faster and faster. It tilted its head to look at Zhou Xuanji, its eyes filled with shock and admiration. Too strong. Zhou Xuanji was more talented than it. Was there a race stronger than the 9 heaven divine snake clan in this world? Its innocent heart was taken over by curiosity. When Zhou Xuanji entered the light hole with it, his cultivation broke through to 3rd revolution golden immortal. Boundless magic power. Zhou Xuanji could not help but howl at the unprecedented power. Even when he held the 9 flame chimera demon sword in his hand, he didn't have such a powerful feeling. It was simply too satisfying. The Divine Cliff. As an overlord of the Great Thousand World, the Divine Cliff controlled the 36 mortal realms. On this day, the golden bell on the Ascension platform suddenly rang. 2 men in silver armor appeared on the Ascension platform. They were surrounded by a boundless sea of clouds. Behind them, there was a stone staircase that led to a portal. Another person has ascended. I wonder how talented this person is. The 2 of them chatted idly. Ascension was already a common occurrence for them. Occasionally, earth-shattering geniuses would come from the mortal realm. They had seen all of them, so they naturally had high standards. However, the golden bell did not stop ringing. It continued to ring louder and louder. The 2 men's expressions turned grim. The louder the bell, the more powerful the ascender. The 2 of them waited curiously. A while later, beads of cold sweat appeared on their foreheads. The bell's ringing was like the sound of creation. It was majestic and shocking. What kind of genius could cause such an epic bell to ring? At this moment, Figures walked out from the portal one after another. The leader was a middle-aged man in a green robe. He wore luxurious clothes and looked majestic. He walked up the ascension platform quickly with a deep frown. The two men in silver armor knelt down immediately. The green-robed man ignored them and looked down at the sea of clouds. In the billowing sea of clouds, a ball of golden radiance could be vaguely seen. The bell never stops ringing. This guy is incredible. At least third-class great emperor. Third-class great emperor. That's a top-notch talent. Which mortal realm is this? Haha, the divine cliff's fate is boundless. Of course, it can give birth to countless geniuses in the mortal realm. The people behind the green-robed man began discussing. Everyone was delighted. Only the green-robed man continued to frown. With such talent, he might already be a second-class great emperor. After hearing the last ring of the bell, he might not have reached his limit. Recently, on the great emperor's stele, he thought of a name and was covered in cold sweat. He immediately left to invite the Cliff Lord. Although the others were confused, they did not think too much and continued chatting. At the same time, another ball of golden radiance appeared below the ascension platform. This meant that another person was ascending. This made the Divine Cliff's cultivators even more excited. A while later, the green-robed man returned. He stood at the edge of the cliff and never relaxed his frown. Emissary Li Qing, why are you unhappy? An old man could not help but ask. The others also looked up at Emissary Li Qing. Emissary Li Qing sighed and said, "You must not tell anyone about what happened today." With this, everyone was shocked. He continued, "This person might have surpassed second-class great emperor. Recently, there were only 2 new cultivators above third-class great emperor on the great emperor's stele, and only one who surpassed second class." Everyone's expression changed drastically. They immediately thought of a name. Zhou Xuanji. The Heavenly Hall lost contact with the Northern Wilderness region and became the laughingstock of the Great Thousand World, while Zhou Xuanji became famous. It was said that a spirit sovereign from the Heavenly Hall used the Heavenly Law Stone to create Heavenly Law puppets for all the powerful cultivators who had the potential to become great emperors. And Zhou Xuanji defeated 1,000 great emperors and great emperors alone, including Lu Wuji, Marquis, and the Hegemon Sword Emperor's Heavenly Law puppets. For some reason, this news had spread across the Great Thousand World. Zhou Xuanji's name was known by everyone. However, there were too many powerful cultivators who wanted to eliminate the Northern Wilderness. Because of this, Zhou Xuanji made countless enemies. If Zhou Xuanji's ascension to the Divine Cliff was exposed, the consequences would be unimaginable. Everyone was silent and extremely nervous. Emissary Li Qing glanced at the 2 silver-armored men beside him, and they knelt down in fear. "We will not leak this. If we dare to leak this, we will be destroyed by heaven and earth." The 2 immediately swore an oath, fearing that Emissary Li Qing would kill them. Emissary Li Qing looked away and looked down again. Zhou Xuanji was indeed a hot potato. Most factions would be terrified and would not accept him. They might even capture him to claim credit. But the Divine Cliff was different. If they could subdue Zhou Xuanji, the Divine Cliff might usher in an even more powerful peak. At the thought of this, Emissary Li Qing's heart beat faster, and his eyes were filled with anticipation. Boom! A ray of golden light pierced through the sea of clouds and rose up. Emissary Li Qing and the others were not surprised, because it was not Zhou Xuanji. Judging from his aura, he was only a 4th-class great emperor. A 4th-class great emperor was actually not bad, and the Divine Cliff could nurture him. It was a pity that there was a 1st-class great emperor beside him, who was enough to overshadow him. Ha ha ha. This emperor is coming. Chapter 417. As the wild and unruly laughter faded, a burly figure leaped out of the golden light. He floated high in the sky with his arms spread out, a fascinated expression on his face. This person was nearly 2 meters tall and had a stocky build. He wore a golden chain mail and had a wild and domineering expression. His long hair was loose, and he looked like a peerless divine general. Once he ascended, he directly jumped from a 5th tribulation scattered immortal to a 2nd revolution golden immortal. How could he not be excited? Soon, He saw emissary Li Qing and the others, and he quickly landed on the ascension platform. He cupped his fists and said with a forthright smile, "Thank you for coming to welcome me. I am Wu Mingyi, a fourth-grade great emperor." In the mortal world where he lived, his ancestors had left behind many stories of ascension. Occasionally, immortals would descend to the mortal world, so he knew about the existence of the divine cliff. Emissary Li Qing nodded indifferently. The others were also very calm. Wu Mingyi was stunned. There was something wrong with his attitude. With so many people welcoming him, it should be because they valued his talent. "You two take him away and settle him down," Emissary Li Qing instructed. The two silver-armored men immediately stood up and left with Wu Mingyi. Wu Mingyi was dumbfounded. The development of the plot was very different from what he had imagined. He noticed that the others looked excited. Following their gazes, he saw a golden light rising from the sea of clouds. Oh my God! So it was to welcome other people. Wu Mingyi was so embarrassed that he wished he could find a hole to hide in. With a flushed face, he followed the two silver-armored men into the portal. Under the sea of clouds, within the golden pillar of light, Zhou Xuanji and Bai Siwen quickly rose up. Bai Siwen's cultivation had stopped increasing, but Zhou Xuanji did not stop. He was already a fourth revolution golden immortal, and was still in the process of breaking through. Bai Siwen worshipped him to the extreme. Too amazing! It made up its mind to hold on to Zhou Xuanji tightly, and not allow him to leave. Very soon, they leaped over the clouds and stopped. Zhou Xuanji saw emissary Li Qing and the others, and they also saw him. He didn't step out immediately, because he was still breaking through. He had already stored the Thunderclap sword, and the 9-flame Chimera Demon sword back into the supreme storage. After this calamity, the Thunderclap sword would definitely break through again. He was looking forward to it. This kid is already a fourth revolution golden immortal. Emissary Li Qing's face twitched, and the others were also frightened. Was this the terror of a first-grade great sovereign? In the past 100,000 years, this was the first time they had seen someone become a fourth revolution golden immortal after ascending. Moreover, looking at his posture, he had yet to stop breaking through. Time continued to pass. No one spoke. The atmosphere was extremely silent. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, when Zhou Xuanji reached 5th Revolution Golden Immortal, his cultivation stopped growing as well. Devil Emperor Dugu had said that he could become a 3rd Revolution Golden Immortal, but he was 2 revolutions higher. Sigh. It would be great if that old brat was here. Zhou Xuanji thought regretfully. He really wanted to see Devil Emperor Dugu's shocked expression. His gaze fell on emissary Li Qing and the others. Seeing their dumbfounded expressions, Zhou Xuanji knew that the situation was not good. It wasn't good to be too high profile. Don't let your enemies find out. After a while, his cultivation stopped increasing, and stopped at the 5th Revolution Golden Immortal. He took a step forward with Bai Siwen, and the golden light dissipated. He looked at emissary Li Qing, and the others with a frown. Emissary Li Qing's solemn face bloomed like a chrysanthemum. "You must be Zhou Xuanji. The Divine Cliff welcomes you," he said with a smile. The Divine Cliff. Zhou Xuanji's pupils contracted. Holy shit. I'm in a thief's den. He remembered that Devil Emperor Dugu was killed by the Divine Cliff. Only his soul fell into the northern wilderness region, and lingered on with his last breath. The Divine Cliff was evidently more powerful than the Heavenly Hall. What should he do? Don't worry. The Divine Cliff rules over a region, which the Heavenly Hall cannot compare to. The Cliff Lord has spoken to allow you to join the Divine Cliff. The Divine Cliff will nurture you with all its resources. Emissary Li Qing saw Zhou Xuanji's worry, and quickly explained. The others also spoke up to rope in Zhou Xuanji. Yeah, the Heavenly Hall is nothing. Ha ha ha. It's your honor to join the Divine Cliff. The Divine Cliff can accept you, but anyone who wants to kill you will have to think twice. I've finally seen a living first-class great emperor. Tisk tsk. Brat, do you know that your name has already shaken the great thousand world? It's very dangerous for you to leave the Divine Cliff. Zhou Xuanji's frown eased. Since the Divine Cliff had no ill intentions, he would not reject them. Devil Emperor Dugu offended the Divine Cliff, but it was not his fault. He immediately brought Bai Siwen, and landed on the ascension platform. Emissary Li Qing glanced at Bai Suwen and said to Zhou Xuanji with a smile, "Come with me to see the Cliff Lord. With your talent, you will be personally taught by the Cliff Lord in the future." Zhou Xuanji nodded. If the Divine Cliff was plotting something, they could have acted directly. Why would they go through so much trouble? He understood that even though he had broken through to 4th Revolution Golden Immortal, he was not a match for the Divine Cliff. And so, a group of people escorted Zhou Xuanji toward the portal. Zhou Xuanji asked the Sword Spirit to show him the information about the All-Evil Yin-Yang Destruction. Sword name, All-Evil Yin-Yang Destruction Grade, Armageddon description, contains tens of thousands of evil energies. Once used, it can tear apart yin and yang, and it has the destructive power to destroy a human realm. One must be at least a 7th Revolution Golden Immortal to use this sword. 7th Revolution Golden Immortal? What a scam! Zhou Xuanji almost cursed it out loud. The difference between a 5th Revolution Golden Immortal and a 7th Revolution Golden Immortal was huge. As he thought about it, he stepped into the portal. His vision blurred, and when he opened his eyes again, he saw a spacious and beautiful stone staircase. It was 30 meters wide, and there was a lake on both sides. Lotus flowers floated on the surface of the lake. In front of him were many majestic palaces and pavilions. At the end of the staircase was a towering mountain that reached into the clouds. At first glance, it looked like a celestial city. Many fairies were flying around in the air, and many cultivators were walking and cultivating on the roads. Some tall pavilions and palaces had mighty giant beasts sitting on top of them. "Brother Zhou, you are related to the 9-Heaven Divine Snake Clan?" Emissary Li Qing's voice came. He looked at Zhou Xuanji with a smile. "You know her?" Zhou Xuanji asked. Emissary Li Qing nodded and said, "The 9-Heaven Divine Snake Clan has a high status and is on good terms with many factions. When this girl was brought here by her elders, I was fortunate enough to see her sleeping soundly on her father's shoulder." Bai Suwen, who was in Zhou Xuanji's arms, looked up and spat her forked tongue. "You have seen my father before?" she asked curiously. Emissary Li Qing chuckled. "Of course. Your father is a true god. He is brilliant and mighty. I can't forget him after seeing him. Such a bootlicker." Zhou Xuanji ridiculed him in his heart, but he looked calm on the surface. "Oh, from now on you better change your name. Don't use Zhou Xuanji's name. When you become a true god and have the power to protect yourself, then you can use your real name to roam the world." Emissary Li Qing changed the topic to Zhou Xuanji with a passionate tone. This guy was not only a first-class great emperor, but also related to the 9-Heaven Divine Snake Clan. He must be on good terms with him. Zhou Xuanji nodded and looked around. Chapter 418. On the way, Emissary Li Qing and the others continued to talk to Zhou Xuanji, causing the cultivators who passed by to look over. They did not recognize Zhou Xuanji, so they guessed that he was a new disciple. A new disciple who could be personally led by Emissary Li Qing was definitely of extraordinary status. Many people remembered Zhou Xuanji's face. If they met him in the future, they would definitely try to rope him in. After traveling for an hour, Emissary Li Qing and the others stopped in front of the stone steps at the foot of the towering peak. This stone staircase was tens of thousands of steps long, and it led halfway up the mountain. There was a huge palace there, and in front of the gate was a furnace that was dozens of feet tall. There were 3 incense sticks that looked like pillars, and the smell of sandalwood filled the air. "You go up. It's not convenient for us to enter the hall." Zhou Xuanji nodded and walked up the stairs with Bai Suwen. This distance was nothing to him. However, he did not walk very fast. He was neither fast nor slow, as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. Bai Suwen looked around, still very excited. Zhou Xuanji asked, "Hey, will your elders come to pick you up later?" The 9-Heaven Divine Snake Clan had a wide network of connections. The disciples of the clan went to the mortal world under the influence of the 9-Heaven Divine Snake Clan, so that after they ascended, they would be taken care of. Bai Suwen scoffed. "I'm not going back. I want to follow you. You've just arrived here, and you've offended so many enemies. I have to protect you." Zhou Xuanji was quite amused. How could a great tribulation scattered immortal protect him? However, he was still a little touched. I didn't teach you for a year in vain. When he reached the top of the stone steps, the palace gate opened. 3 men and 2 women walked out. They looked very young. The men were handsome, and the women were fairy-like. They talked and laughed as they walked over. They noticed Zhou Xuanji, and came over to greet him. Are you the new core disciple? A bald young man said with a smile as he sized up Zhou Xuanji. The other 4 had different expressions. Some were curious, some were disdainful, and some were judging. Zhou Xuanji could not see through their cultivation, and was shocked in his heart. Their cultivation level was definitely above 5th Revolution Golden Immortal. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and said, I just ascended. I don't know what the divine cliff has arranged for me. Hearing this, the crowd was shocked. The lady in the blue dress muttered, to be able to meet the cliff master right after ascending, he must have the aptitude of a great emperor, and he must have reached the 3rd grade. The other 4 were even more curious. In the Great Thousand Worlds, the difficulty of becoming a martial emperor was much greater than in the mortal world. It wasn't because of the difficulty of the heavenly Tao, but because there were too many experts. It was easy to be ambushed when undergoing the tribulation. Furthermore, those who became martial emperors from the mortal world were practically all unrivaled existences. They had gone through countless battles. This was something that the disciples of many sects and clans in the Great Thousand World couldn't compare to. Zhou Xuanji gave off an elegant aura, and he did not look like a 3rd-class great emperor. Let's talk again next time. After saying this, Zhou Xuanji left. These 5 people evidently had their own intentions, and they might not have good intentions. He quickly led Bai Sowen into the gate. The 5 core disciples of the Divine Cliff looked at each other. The bald young man said meaningfully, it seems like an extraordinary person has come to the Divine Cliff. With that, he laughed and left. The other 4 also disappeared from where they stood. After entering the hall, the door slammed shut. Zhou Xuanji looked ahead and saw 3 golden statues in front of the wall. The entire palace was resplendent and majestic. A man stood in front of the 3 golden statues with his back facing Zhou Xuanji. He had a medium build and wore a black robe. There was a hideous and strange beast diagram on his back, and his long white hair casually draped over his back. Just by looking at his back, Zhou Xuanji could sense an immense might. This was definitely the most powerful person he had ever seen in his life. The world calls me Han Shuzi. I'm the 16th Cliff Lord of the Divine Cliff. The Cliff Lord said as he turned around. The Divine Cliff's Cliff Master turned around and said. His face could be considered handsome, and he looked to be in his early 40s. His eyes were golden and extremely strange. Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, thank you for taking me in. You are not my enemy. Along the way, he thought about many things. He decided to stay in the Divine Cliff. Since the Divine Cliff was willing to protect him, why should he take the risk? To him, the most important thing was to become more powerful. He must become more powerful before the true gods found the northern wilderness region, so that he would not fear them. Han Shuzi smiled and said, your sect? From today onwards, you are a core disciple of the Divine Cliff. You will receive the same treatment as my personal disciple. Why are you still so distant? Zhou Xuanji was a little stunned. He immediately cupped his fist and bowed. Han Shuzi waved his hand and said, there is no need for such formalities. You have the talent of a first-class great emperor, and might surpass me in the future. I hope that you can acknowledge the Divine Cliff, and become a true member of the Divine Cliff. Of course, if you have other ambitions in the future, don't abandon the Divine Cliff, and continue to protect it. Although the Divine Cliff was powerful, it only had one first-class great emperor, and that was the previous Cliff Lord. Zhou Xuanji said, repaying kindness with kindness has always been my principle. Han Shuzi looked at him intently before waving his hand and gesturing for him to come forward. After that, Han Shuzi began to tell Zhou Xuanji about the long history of the Divine Cliff. The Divine Cliff had existed for more than 500,000 years, even longer than the northern wilderness humans. Countless geniuses had been born, and dozens of them were listed on the Great Emperor's Stele. Zhou Xuanji also learned that he was ranked 12th on the Great Emperor Stele. In the past 100,000 years, no new Great Emperor could be ranked in the top 20. This showed how devilish Zhou Xuanji was. However, Zhou Xuanji was not satisfied with this. This meant that there were 11 others who were more talented than him. Han Shuzi also talked about the structure of the Great Thousand World. The Great Thousand World, which was the upper realm, was incredibly vast. Even if all the mortal realms were added together, they would not be as big as it. The number of living beings was also incalculable. The Center God Province was the center of the Great Thousand World, and the Divine Cliff was also in the Center God Province. Currently, there were more than 10 factions in the Center God Province that were not inferior to the Divine Cliff, while the Heavenly Hall was only a second-rate faction in the Center God Province. Zhou Xuanji was shocked by what he heard. The upper realm was bigger and more exciting than he had imagined. There was always someone more powerful than you out there. According to Han Shuzi, the God provinces outside the Center God Province were also very powerful. However, the relationships between the God provinces were tense and hostile toward each other. He advised Zhou Xuanji not to leave the Center God Province when he went out in the future, in case he encountered any mishaps. The Center God Province was only on land, but there were factions in the sky as well. Each of the 33 heavens was equivalent to a Great Thousand World, and the Great Emperor Stele was above the 33 heavens. Further up, it was the residences of the powerhouses, who were on equal footing with the heavenly law. After chatting with Han Shuzi for an hour, he finally let Zhou Xuanji go. Before he left, he passed a medallion to Zhou Xuanji. It was a golden medallion with the image of 3 gods carved on it. Behind it was the image of a cliff, which was incredibly exquisite. Finally, Han Shuzi instructed, "Stay here for 3 months. I will send someone to take care of you. If you have any questions, you can ask him for help." Half a year later, the Center God Province's Ascender examination will be held. At that time, you must bring glory to the Divine Cliff. If you can emerge victorious, you will receive great rewards that can help you reach 10th Revolution Golden Immortal within 10 years. You must not miss this opportunity. From today onwards, you will be called Ji Xian. Chapter 419. Ji Xian. Zhou Xuanji walked out of the palace with the Divine Cliff Core token in his hand as he thought about his new name. Outside the hall, a burly man was waiting. He was wearing cotton clothes, and his muscles bulged out his clothes. His face was ferocious, and facing Zhou Xuanji, he immediately gave a simple and honest smile. He cupped his fists and said, "My name is Fei Hai, and I am a disciple of the Divine Cliff. From today onwards, I will be your servant. If you need anything, just leave it to me. The Divine Cliff has already arranged a residence for you. I will take you there now." He quietly sized up Zhou Xuanji. This was the first time he had seen someone who was already a core disciple upon entering the sect. News about Zhou Xuanji had already spread in the Divine Cliff. Fei Hai was quite happy to be chosen as Zhou Xuanji's servant. To him this was a great opportunity. Zhou Xuanji nodded, and left quickly under Fei Hai's lead. The two of them stepped into the air. Along the way, Fei Hai did not speak much and led the way obediently. After the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, the two arrived in front of a mansion. This residence was located on a small mountain, and immortal energy pervaded the air. There were 3 courtyards inside, and many spirit flowers and spirit herbs were planted there. In the courtyard, there were 2 old servants and 3 maidservants cleaning. Seeing Zhou Xuanji and Jiang Chen arrive, they immediately knelt down and paid their respects. "Greetings, Master." Zhou Xuanji scanned with his divine sense, and found that the disciples living in the nearby hills were all very powerful. The weakest was a 3rd Revolution Golden Immortal. It seemed like this was the residence of the Divine Cliff's geniuses. Fei Hai cupped his fists and said respectfully, "Senior, please stay here for now. I have to go back and pack my things. I will stay in one of the guest rooms here, so that you can summon me at any time. At the same time, I will help you collect your stipend and disciple robes. Please give me the Divine Cliff Core token." Zhou Xuanji threw the Divine Cliff Core token to him, and entered the residence with Bai Suwen. Fei Hai left quickly. He was very excited and did not want to waste any more time, lest he displease Zhou Xuanji. The spiritual qi here is abundant. Bai Siwen cried out in shock, which made Zhou Xuanji roll his eyes at her. Could it be that the spiritual qi of your 9 heavens divine snake clan is inferior to this place? Soon, he found a nice courtyard to stay in. There were many seeds of natural treasures in the supreme storage, including the 5-colored immortal fruit. However, this place was too conspicuous, and he was afraid of being stolen, so he didn't plant them for the time being. On that day Fei Hai returned. He brought back a set of core disciple uniforms and 500 pure spirit pills for Zhou Xuanji. The Great Thousand World used mortal pills as currency. Pure spirit pills were the upgraded version of mortal pills. 1 pure spirit pill was equivalent to 1,000 mortal pills. Core disciples could receive 500 pure spirit pills every month, which could be used for cultivation or as money. Zhou Xuanji could also go to the Enchanted Artifact Pavilion to get a suitable enchanted artifact. In addition, core disciples could enter the Cultivation Technique Pavilion once a month for free. However, this opportunity could not be accumulated. If they did not go this month, they could only enter the Cultivation Technique Pavilion once next month, and they could only stay for 3 days at a time. In the blink of an eye, half a month passed. Zhou Xuanji did not leave his house and tried to comprehend the cultivation of a 5th Revolution Golden Immortal. After he got used to it, he left with Fei Hai. He left Bai Siwen in the mansion because he wanted to go to the technique chamber, and it was not suitable for him to bring her along. On the way, Fei Hai introduced the situation of the Divine Cliff to him. There were over 1 million disciples in the Divine Cliff, and they were divided into outer disciples, inner disciples, elite disciples, core disciples, and direct disciples. After becoming an elite disciple, they could leave the Divine Cliff and work in various places. They could even supervise a mortal realm. However, the minimum requirement to become an elite disciple was 5th Revolution Golden Immortal. To most disciples, it was beyond their reach, including Fei Hai. During this period, Fei Hai mentioned the major events that happened recently. Core disciple Long Kuan went out to train and was hunted down by the Blood Devil Palace. He almost died, and this caused a huge commotion in the Divine Cliff. The Blood Devil Palace was an overlord-level faction that was not inferior to the Divine Cliff. The daughter of the palace lord, Xiao Hongjun, disappeared mysteriously, which caused the Blood Devil Palace to become more irritable and create trouble everywhere. Zhou Xuanji looked calm, but he had some doubts in his heart. It turned out that Xiao Hongjun had descended to the mortal realm secretly. She deserved it. Now that she was trapped in the northern wilderness region, there was no help for her. Zhou Xuanji was very rich and did not need to go out on missions to increase his wealth. Wealth was very important because it could be used to exchange for more cultivation resources. Soon, they came to the Energy Technique Pavilion. Zhou Xuanji asked Fei Hai to find out the whereabouts of the 18 divine swords. Fei Hai had a strange expression, but he still agreed. After entering the pavilion, Zhou Xuanji flashed his Divine Cliff Core token, and the disciples on duty let him in. His target was the sword techniques and some sealing spells. The Energy Technique Pavilion was huge. It was decorated in an antique manner, and many disciples stood before the bookshelves to read. Zhou Xuanji found a random bookshelf and began reading. On the other side, in the Cliff Lord Palace, Han Shuzi sat on the main seat. Dozens of people stood in the palace, and each of them had a powerful aura. He looked around and asked, Ji Xian's incident was not exposed, right? Emissary Li Qing replied, No. Those who know about this have been cursed. If they leak it, they will be punished by heaven and earth. Han Shuzi nodded. A handsome man with an elegant temperament stepped forward. He wore a white robe and was very eye-catching in the crowd. His name was Yang Yutian, the eldest disciple of Han Shuzi. He was a true god and extremely powerful. Revered teacher, I found out that Divine Lord Ji is also searching for the northern wilderness region secretly. His target is most likely Ji Xian. Should we be careful? Divine Lord Ji's foresight is miraculous and can always predict the future. We must be careful. Yang Yutian said with a solemn expression as he cupped his fist. As for Han Shuzi taking in Zhou Xuanji, he neither objected nor agreed to it, because the pros and cons were too complicated. Han Shuzi squinted his eyes and said, "Although Divine Lord Ji is powerful, he acts strangely and never attacks openly. Let's pretend that we don't know about this, and stop investigating him, lest we alert the enemy." Yang Yutian nodded. Investigating Divine Lord Ji was extremely stressful, and he wanted to give up a long time ago. He thought of something else and said, Shi Shenzong is about to become a great emperor. Although the Hegemon Sword sect is a new force that rose 10,000 years ago, Shi Shenzong is extremely talented and is the revered teacher of the Hegemon Sword Emperor. We must stop him. The Divine Cliff and the Hegemon Sword Emperor had always been on bad terms. Back then, Han Shuzi tried to recruit the Hegemon Sword Emperor, but was rejected rudely. Han Shuzi did not take it out on him. But after that, the Hegemon Sword Emperor would teach the Divine Cliff disciples a lesson. Although he did not kill them, it was a slap to the Divine Cliff's face. An old man said with a frown, "The Cliff Lord can't go personally. Who should we send? The Hegemon Sword Emperor is not weak." Not only Han Shuzi, but Yang Yutian was also not suitable. If they were to go, they would be bullying the weak. Han Shuzi smiled and said, "Let Ji Xian go and make a name for himself before the Ascender examination. When the time comes, it will be harder for him to be exposed." Moreover, Ji Xian defeated Shi Shenzong in the northern wilderness region. Even the Hegemon Sword Emperor was defeated by him. Mentioning this, everyone's expression changed. Every time they thought of Zhou Xuanji's accomplishments, they felt mixed emotions. If they were at Zhou Xuanji's cultivation level, they would not have been able to defeat the Heavenly Law Army. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 420. 3 days later, Zhou Xuanji walked out of the Energy Technique Pavilion. Fei Hai was already waiting for him at the door. "Senior, how was it?" Fei Hai asked with a silly smile. His eyes were filled with envy. He wanted to enter the Energy Technique Pavilion too, but it required too many pure spirit pills. Almost all of his pure spirit pills were spent on cultivation. For disciples like them, who were not very talented, pure spirit pills were a necessity for cultivation. Zhou Xuanji nodded lightly and said, "Not bad." He memorized all the sword techniques in the Energy Technique Pavilion. In the Great Thousand World, energy techniques, spells, and divine abilities were not differentiated by grades. But after a glance, he felt that these sword techniques were more powerful than most sword techniques in the northern wilderness region. The Divine Cliff lived up to its name indeed. The Divine Cliff was not a sword sect, so there were not many sword techniques. But there were still quite a few. He memorized about 400 sword techniques. He planned to record these sword techniques after he returned, and put them in Skyfall Xuanji Sword Pavilion. This was somewhat shameless. He could only apologize to the Divine Cliff, and help them as much as he could in the future. The two returned to the residence. There was a guest in the courtyard. It was Emissary Li Qing. He was one of the 36 emissaries of the Divine Cliff. He had a high status and powerful cultivation, so the servants naturally invited him into the residence. Seeing Zhou Xuanji, he got up with a smile and said, "Brother Zhou, how have you been? The Divine Cliff has a mission for you to do." He went straight to the point, and did not beat around the bush. "What mission?" Zhou Xuanji asked. He was shocked in his heart. He thought that the Divine Cliff would protect him tightly, and not allow him to go out before he became powerful enough. He did not expect a mission so soon. Emissary Li Qing told him about the mission. It was about Shi Shenzong becoming a great emperor, which made Zhou Xuanji laugh. He did not expect this guy to become a great emperor. Zhou Xuanji said directly, "Does Shi Shenzong have enmity with the Divine Cliff? To be honest, I admire him." He comprehended his sword soul from Shi Shenzong. In Shi Shenzong, he saw the true spirit of a sword saint. Emissary Li Qing was a little stunned. He has no enmity with the Divine Cliff, but the Hegemon Sword Emperor does. Zhou Xuanji understood and said, "Then I will do my best." Each of them had their own masters, so there was nothing much to say. Actually, it's fine to let him become a great emperor. However, If you can deal a heavy blow to the hegemon sword sect's spirit, you will have completed your mission, Emissary Li Qing said with a meaningful smile. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow and accepted the mission. He then asked when they would depart. Emissary Li Qing replied, "Tomorrow, you will go with another core disciple, Lan Shangying. She will lead the way." Zhou Xuanji nodded and asked, "What if I accidentally expose my identity?" If he was in a life-or-death situation, he might have to use all his trump cards. Even if he didn't, he might be recognized. Emissary Li Qing smiled and said, "You have already become a great emperor and have nothing to do with the mortal realm. If anyone doesn't believe that you are Ji Xian, they can come to the divine cliff to demand an explanation." Domineering, Zhou Xuanji was almost convinced. Zhou Xuanji had already become a great emperor and was not in the northern wilderness region. He was no longer the biggest obstacle to the plan to exterminate the northern wilderness humans. At least not on the surface. Emissary Li Qing exchanged a few more pleasantries and left. Fei Hai asked curiously, "Senior, is your identity very special?" Zhou Xuanji glanced at him and said with a smile that did not seem like a smile, "That's a secret. If you know, you will die." Fei Hai was so frightened that his body trembled, and he hurriedly covered his mouth. Time passed quickly for the two of them. Lan Shangying came to find Zhou Xuanji when the sun had just risen. Bai Siwen insisted on following him, and he had no choice but to put her in his bosom. After walking out of the residence, he saw Lan Shangying. This woman was wearing a blue dress and had a slim figure. Her facial features were exquisite, but her expression was very cold. She gave off the aura of a fairy, holy and inviolable. Before, Zhou Xuanji had seen her when he had visited Han Shuzi. Lan Shangying nodded slightly and said, "Let's go." After saying this, she gripped her scabbard and flew away on her sword. Zhou Xuanji followed closely behind her. The two of them flew through the clouds and did not speak. She did not speak, and Zhou Xuanji did not bother to talk to her. However, Bai Siwen was very excited. She stuck out her snake head and continuously chattered. The first time Zhou Xuanji heard her voice, he had thought that she was an introverted female demon. After getting to know her, he realized that it was all a lie. The two of them flew faster and faster. Lan Shangying was testing Zhou Xuanji and found that no matter how fast she flew, Zhou Xuanji could keep up. Fifth Revolution Golden Immortal. Did he really just ascend? She was shocked in her heart and became even more curious about Zhou Xuanji. After passing through the dense fog, Zhou Xuanji could finally see the outline of the land. Below him, the mountains rose and fell, and birds flew in circles. Looking up, he could see many towns and villages. The Great Thousand World was similar to the northern wilderness region, just that it was much larger and had denser spiritual qi. In a wasteland, Shi Shenzong sat on a giant rock, internalizing qi with his legs crossed. 1,000 meters away, there were sword cultivators standing guard in all directions. They looked around warily. The hegemon sword emperor was there too. He had a muscular figure and sat on a golden throne. His hands were on the hilt of his sword, and the blade was stabbed into the rock beneath him. He wore a brown fur robe with black armor underneath. His black hair danced in the wind, and he gave off a wild aura. He did not look like a sword emperor, but a shocking demon king. He looked at Shi Shenzong expectantly. He had never doubted Shi Shenzong's talent. After all, Shi Shenzong was the person he respected the most. Although they had conflicts before, their relationship had never deteriorated. A sword cultivator appeared beside him and half knelt. "Sect Lord, according to reliable news, Nangong Lai is coming with 100 golden immortals," he said with a deep voice. The hegemon sword emperor heard him, and his eyes sparkled. As expected, the news was leaked, he mumbled. He could not help but feel a headache. He was powerful, but he could not rule the Center God province unhindered. After all, he had only ascended for 10,000 years, and the hegemon sword sect he established was not powerful enough. As such, he had to help Shi Shenzong become a great emperor. "Scout again," the hegemon sword emperor said, and the sword cultivator immediately left. He looked at Shi Shenzong again. As long as Shi Shenzong became a great emperor, any sacrifice would be worth it. He suddenly thought of Zhou Xuanji. Compared to that brat's talent, Shi Shenzong would seem mediocre. It could even be said that Zhou Xuanji was the most talented person in the history of the Northern Wilderness region. It was a pity that he insisted on protecting the Northern Wilderness region. If he did not think things through, he would be finished sooner or later. As for Zhou Xuanji, he greatly admired him. Back in the inheritance world, Zhou Xuanji's words had allowed him to break through in his way of the sword and greatly increase his strength. He had wanted to recruit Zhou Xuanji. It was a pity that this fellow was too monstrous. Before he had ascended, everyone in the Center God province had heard of his name. Every time he thought of this, the Hegemon Sword Emperor would feel very angry. He felt a kind of annoyance that someone could not live up to his expectations. Of course, it was not that this person could not live up to his expectations, but that he was too tough. Boom! At that moment, an explosion sounded out, breaking the Hegemon Sword Emperor's thoughts and causing him to look. Shi Shenzong exploded out with magic energy, and traces of wind wrapped around his body, causing the ground to tremble. Thunderclouds gathered. He was preparing to become a great emperor. Before, Shi Shenzong had already defeated 10 great emperor candidates, and everything was going smoothly. Before becoming a great emperor, he wanted to comprehend his way of the sword. It seemed that he had gained an even higher level of comprehension. TXT. I have countless legendary swords. Chapter 421. When Shi Shenzong began to become a great emperor, Zhou Xuanji and Lan Xiangying were still moving forward. Lan Xiangying had extraordinary talent, but she had never become a great emperor before. To become a great emperor, not only talent was needed, but fate was also needed. Lan Xiangying had lived in the Divine Cliff since she was young. She would go out to train occasionally, but she had never obtained heavenly law fate. So, she was very interested in becoming a great emperor, especially a third-class great emperor like Zhou Xuanji. Third-class great emperor was the identity given to Zhou Xuanji by the Divine Cliff. After all, a first-class great emperor was too eye-catching and would easily attract the attention of the Center God province. If Shi Shenzong can become a great emperor, then he will not need to undergo the tribulation. When we arrive, he might have already become a great emperor, Zhou Xuanji reminded. Zhou Xuanji reminded. This woman was simply too cold. They had been out for a few days, but she had not spoken a single word. But she kept sizing him up secretly, and he could not take it anymore. Lan Xiangying didn't even turn her head as she said, "Then kill him." Such arrogance. Zhou Xuanji rolled his eyes and asked, "Are you a match for the Hegemon Sword Emperor?" Lan Xiangying replied, "I have the power to fight." She was a core disciple of the Divine Cliff, and was naturally powerful. Zhou Xuanji fell silent. He had accidentally given her a chance to act cool, and he was a little unhappy. The two continued forward quickly. They were getting closer to the place where Shi Shenzong was becoming a great emperor, and they could already sense the heavenly might. Lan Xiangying's eyes squinted, and she suddenly increased her speed, flying over. Zhou Xuanji followed closely behind. Such a powerful aura. It must be the Hegemon Sword Emperor. Who is he fighting with? Zhou Xuanji thought to himself curiously. He had yet to fight with his full power after reaching 5th Revolution Golden Immortal. He was looking forward to seeing how powerful he was. The Hegemon Sword Emperor should have already surpassed Golden Immortal. The Hegemon Sword Emperor must have participated in the Ascender examination that Han Shuzi mentioned. With his fame, how could he not be the final victor? At the same time, in the barren land, Shi Shenzong stood in the air and enjoyed the heavenly grace. His cultivation grew tremendously. 2 powerful beams of light clashed violently around the heavenly grace pillar. It was the Hegemon Sword Emperor and Nangong Lai. More precisely, Nangong Lai wanted to stop Shi Shenzong from becoming a great emperor, but the Hegemon Sword Emperor had been stopping him. Nangong Lai wore a blue robe with a phoenix embroidered with golden threads. He held a circular fan in his hands and fought in tin with the Hegemon. Silhouettes of cultivators could be seen fighting in every direction. Explosions rang out one after another, shattering the land within a radius of 500 kilometers. The Hegemon Sword Emperor wielded the gigantic sword in his hand and danced about wildly. Sword chi wreaked havoc, and even the thunder clouds were scattered. However, no matter how powerful he was, Nangong Lai could easily receive his attacks. Hegemon Sword Emperor, you are still too young. I advise you to give up. Nangong Lai coldly mocked, his gaze never leaving Shishinzong. Shishinzong must die. With his talent, he would definitely become a second-grade great sovereign. The Hegemon Sword Emperor did not reply. He continuously executed all sorts of sword arts, but he still did not allow Nangong Lai to get close to the heavenly grace light pillar. Even his magic power could not be used. Shishinzong's cultivation had already reached the first revolution golden immortal realm. Previously, he had already ascended, and his cultivation had reached the 8th tribulation scattered immortal realm. Furthermore, he had received the Hegemon Sword Emperor's nurturing, so he had already reached the peak of the 9th tribulation scattered immortal realm before becoming a martial emperor. After breaking through to the first revolution golden immortal realm, he slowly opened his eyes and a sword soul condensed behind him. So powerful. Is this a heavenly revolution golden immortal? He stared at his hands and muttered to himself, ignoring the fighting around him. Zhou Xuanji, I still surpassed you. He laughed in high spirits, insufferably arrogant. When he had found out that Zhou Xuanji had become a first-class great emperor, he had not come back to his senses for a few days. Now that Zhou Xuanji was trapped in the northern wilderness region and could not break through to Heavenly Revolution Golden Immortal, he had done it first. He suddenly wanted to fight Zhou Xuanji again. It was a pity that he had lost contact with the northern wilderness region. Xiao. An ear-piercing sound was heard as Lan Xiangying charged over with her sword. She was extremely fast. The Hegemon Sword Emperor widened his eyes and bellowed furiously. You're courting death. Another huge sword appeared in his left hand, and he slashed at Lan Xiangying. The sword chi turned into mountains and rivers, and it was majestic and unstoppable. Lan Xiangying's expression changed slightly. She shook her right hand, and sword flowers shot out in all directions. Sword chi turned into a storm and crashed into the Sword Chi mountain river. Bang! The ground shook, and Shishinzong was almost sent flying. He gritted his teeth and stared at Lan Xiangying. This woman's cultivation level is so high. Lan Xiangying didn't attack him. Instead, she charged towards the Hegemon Sword Emperor. Nangong Lai, let's fight him together. Lan Xiangying said coldly. Hearing this, Nangong Lai laughed heartily. The core disciples of the Divine Cliff are indeed ruthless. He sighed in admiration, and his gaze turned to the Hegemon Sword Emperor. His gaze became ruthless. Once Lan Xiangying joined in, the Hegemon Sword Emperor became passive. This is going to be troublesome. The Hegemon Sword Emperor groaned inwardly. If the Divine Cliff sent another core disciple, then it would really be over. He subconsciously looked in the direction that Lan Xiangying had come from, and his expression changed drastically. A black-robed swordsman walked over with a sword in hand. He wore a bamboo hat and an iron mask. It was Zhou Xuanji. He held the Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss and walked towards Shishinzong step by step. Shishinzong also noticed him and couldn't help but feel shocked. Such a powerful sword chi. Shishinzong narrowed his eyes, and seeing Zhou Xuanji's eyes, his heart trembled. Could it be him? Impossible. As if struck by lightning, he froze on the spot. Shouldn't Zhou Xuanji be in the northern wilderness region? Be careful. This kid is a 5th Revolution Golden Immortal. The Hegemon Sword Emperor fought 1 against 2. But he didn't forget to remind Shishinzong. 5th Revolution Golden Immortal. Shishinzong deeply breathed in. This person most likely wasn't Zhou Xuanji. No matter how talented Zhou Xuanji was, it was impossible for him to have 5th Revolution Golden Immortal cultivation right now. Moreover, it was the first time he had seen the sword in Zhou Xuanji's hand. Zhou Xuanji did not have such a sword. Zhou Xuanji walked at a moderate pace, as if he was not in a hurry to act. Shishinzong immediately understood. His opponent was waiting for him to become a great emperor. This was not out of goodwill. Instead, it was an extreme battle intent. Shishinzong's gaze became sharp, and he took out his 2 swords. After the heavenly grace disappeared, he would rush at Zhou Xuanji. Even though there was a difference of 4 revolutions in cultivation, he was going to fight. He was the sword saint, and in terms of the way of the sword, he would not lose to others. Moreover, they were both golden immortals, and with his talent, he could make up for the difference in cultivation levels. Zhou Xuanji closely looked at Shi Shenzong and inwardly praised. You're already a first revolution golden immortal, not bad. Not too long ago, Shi Shenzong's cultivation had been higher than his. He swept out his divine sense towards the Hegemon Sword Emperor, Nangong Lai, and Lan Xiangying. The battle between the 3 of them was incredibly grand, and it could be described as apocalyptic. They definitely surpassed 10th Revolution Golden Immortals. Void Extreme Immortal. He learned from the Divine Cliffs Technique Pavilion that the Void Extreme Immortal was above the 10th Revolution Golden Immortal, and above that was the True God. Void Extreme Immortals could already do as they pleased in the Center God Province. Of course, they were still far from being comparable to True Gods. Looks like if I want to challenge the Hegemon Sword Emperor, I'll have to climb even higher. Zhou Xuanji thought. Although he had received the Hegemon Sword Emperor's inheritance, it did not stop him from challenging the Hegemon Sword Emperor. Since he wanted to be the only Sword Emperor, the other Sword Emperors had to be defeated by his sword. Chapter 422. Bai Siwen popped her head out from Zhou Xuanji's bosom and looked at the battle in the sky. Wow, so strong. Are we really going there? Little Ji Xian, are you as strong as them? Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji felt a headache. He ignored it and continued to look at Shi Shenzong. This fellow was about to succeed in becoming a great emperor. He had already become a 5th-grade great sovereign. From the looks of it, he should be a 2nd-grade great martial emperor. After all, he was once the most outstanding genius in the way of the sword in the history of the northern wilderness region. Even the Hegemon Sword Emperor was inferior to him. Seeing Zhou Xuanji come closer and closer to Shi Shenzong, the Hegemon Sword Emperor felt incredibly worried. However, he could only barely hold on against 2 Void Extreme Immortals, and he was unable to help Shi Shenzong. In the distance, the Hegemon Sword Sect's sword cultivators were still fighting bitterly. 6 of them had already died. The 100 Heavenly Revolution Golden Immortals that Nangong Lai brought were clearly stronger. Who is that guy? Why does it give me a familiar feeling? The Hegemon Sword Emperor thought to himself as he fought. Zhou Xuanji did not immediately act. Evidently not because he feared him, but because he wanted to wait until Shi Shenzong became a great emperor before acting. The reason was very simple, because his footsteps did not stop. Zhou Xuanji looked down at his Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss and mumbled, "Today, you will reveal your brilliance." Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss. He spoke in a deliberately hoarse voice. Shi Shenzong, who was within the pillar of divine grace, frowned. The name Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss did not sound like a good thing. Ghost Sword. Zhou Xuanji slowly walked forwards, waiting for Shi Shenzong to finish becoming a great emperor. Ding! The legendary sword's level has been successfully updated. From low to high, they are ordinary stone, iron, bronze, silver, gold, purple crystal, glorious gold, heavenly soul, intimidating spirit, celestial shaking, god-slaying, apocalyptic, ancient gazing, disaster releasing, cosmos essence, overturning heaven, heavenly connection, 9 extremities, and primordial chaos. The sword spirit's voice suddenly sounded out in Zhou Xuanji's mind, which stunned him. A new divine sword level. Ancient gazing, disaster releasing, universe essence, overturning heavens, heavenspan, 9 extremities, primordial chaos. A total of 7 major realms. His breathing quickened. As expected, the supreme legendary sword system did not disappoint him. Even if he came to the boundless world, he could still rely on the divine sword to rise. However, just the Armageddon sword required the cultivation of a 7th Revolution Golden Immortal. So what realm did the ancient gazing sword require? Where is the disaster-releasing divine sword? Where was the divine sword of Qian Yuan? The more he thought about it, the more his head hurt. Of course, he was even more excited. 100 miles away, an old beggar sat on the peak of a 2,000 feet tall mountain. He held a roasted leg in his hand, and his hand was covered in grease. His body was thin and short, and his hair was as white as withered grass. His face was covered in freckles and dirt. While munching on the roasted leg, he clicked his tongue in wonder and said, "Three Void Extreme Immortals are fighting here, and one of them is becoming a great emperor. It seems like he has the potential of a second-grade great emperor. How interesting." Behind him, a valiant man dressed in luxurious clothes walked over. This person had a handsome face and a strong physique. The purple robe he wore resembled a dragon's robe. He frowned slightly and looked at the old beggar impatiently. "Master, are we still on our way?" The purple-robed man asked in a deep voice. He was the most helpless when it came to his master. The old beggar looked at the battle in the distance and snorted. "Little four, don't think that you can be so arrogant just because you have the title of Crown Dragon Dark Saber." Back then Di Guanlong felt like his head was about to explode. Every time he urged the old beggar, the beggar would start boasting. Because they were master and disciple, he had to listen. Helplessly, he could only look into the distance. Second-grade great emperor? Humph. Di Guanlong snorted coldly in disdain. A while later, Shi Shenzong finally became a great emperor and reached second-grade great emperor. The light pillar of divine grace dissipated. He held both swords in his hands and turned to look at Zhou Xuanji. His eyes were burning with battle intent. "I'm the Sword Saint Shi Shenzong. Who are you? Tell me your name." Shi Shenzong cried out proudly. With both swords in his hands, he feared nothing in the world. Zhou Xuanji hastened his steps and dashed over. "I'm the Divine Cliff's core disciple Ji Xian." After he spoke, Zhou Xuanji came up to Shi Shenzong with the 8-step sword lunge and slashed at him. So fast. Shi Shenzong's pupils contracted as he thought to himself in shock. He knew about the Divine Cliff's core disciples. All of them were elites among men. How could a 5th Revolution Golden Immortal become a core disciple? He did not have time to think, and instinctively blocked with his swords. Clang! Zhou Xuanji sent Shi Shenzong flying back with a single slash. The horrifying power almost caused Shi Shenzong's swords to fly out of his hands. After flying out for 1,000 meters, he stabbed both swords into the ground and slid dozens of meters before he stopped. His eyes turned cold and fearless. Instead, he unleashed his aura and charged at Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji did not use his signature sword technique. Instead, he used a sword technique that he had just learned. Wind Breath Wave Sword. He quickly swung the Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss, and ghostly howls could be heard. Clang! 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 The two of them fought intensely. Both of their swords were extremely fast, and afterimages of their swords appeared one after another. Their movements were gorgeous and pleasing to the eye. A violent gale blew and isolated the battlefield. Zhou Xuanji used his absolute advantage and cultivation to suppress Shi Shenzong. Shi Shenzong could only barely deal with Zhou Xuanji's attacks and could not retaliate. Damn! Shi Shenzong gritted his teeth and wanted to use his sword soul. However, Zhou Xuanji's swords were extremely cunning and difficult to defend against. He could not find an opportunity to activate his sword soul. Zhou Xuanji suddenly laughed with a hoarse voice. "I've just ascended for less than a month. You are inferior to me." Shi Shenzong's pupils contracted. Just ascended? The cultivation level of those who ascended from the mortal world did not exceed that of a 5th Tribulation Scattered Immortal. How did he become a 5th Revolution Golden Immortal? Shi Shenzong's heart trembled. At that moment, Zhou Xuanji suddenly unleashed the Wind Breath Wave Sword Will. In the blink of an eye, Shi Shenzong's body was covered with wounds, and his swords flew out of his hands. Zhou Xuanji's attainments in the way of the sword surpassed his, and adding on his great emperor rank, cultivation and legendary swords, how could Shi Shenzong not lose? Xiao! The tip of the sword landed on his throat, and Shi Shenzong's body froze. His face turned red, and he gritted his teeth. He felt so aggrieved that he was about to explode. He was defeated before he even used his ultimate skill. It was really vexing. Zhou Xuanji suddenly sent a telepathic message to him, causing him to open his eyes wide, as if he had seen a ghost. "I'm Zhou Xuanji. Follow me and become my sword slave. I'll definitely help you surpass the 9 emperors of the Way of the Sword." Shi Shenzong was not humiliated by his words. He was still in shock and was unable to pull himself out of it. How could this be? He was Zhou Xuanji? Why was he here? And he was a 5th Revolution Golden Immortal? At that moment, Shi Shinzong suddenly felt an urge to explode with vulgarities, but the Sword Saint's self-restraint made it so that he could not say a single word. Shameless brat, if you dare to kill him, I won't let you off for the rest of my life. The Hegemon Sword Emperor furiously roared, sounding like thunder. Zhou Xuanji ignored him and looked at Shi Shinzong with a burning gaze. Shi Shinzong's talent in the way of the sword was simply too shocking, and it was best to use him for himself. It was just like the Heavenly Palace's Xianyuan Xinhao, who was still being brainwashed at Skyfall. Shi Shinzong gritted his teeth and sent a telepathic message. Are you humiliating me? Zhou Xuanji calmly replied. Among my sword slaves, there are 2 10,000-year princes, one descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline, one exquisite sword mind, and one overseas as #1 genius in the way of the sword. Their talent is not inferior to yours, so how is taking me as their master humiliating you? I have the talent of a first-class great emperor, and before I ascended, I killed a 1st Revolution Golden Immortal and destroyed all those who became great emperors. In the current world, apart from me, who has the qualifications to make you submit? Do you want to go through today's situation again? You'd rather follow your disciple and become a joke than follow me? The Hegemon Sword Emperor cannot protect you, but I can. Chapter 423. Shi Shinzong fell silent. Zhou Xuanji's words caused him to feel shocked, and he also felt a stabbing pain in his heart. That was right. He was a sword saint, but after ascending, he had to rely on his disciple to protect him. Wasn't this a joke? He also wanted to be independent. However, he had offended the Xianyuan clan of the Heavenly Palace, and the other forces were also drooling over his talent. If he did not have anyone to protect him, it would be very difficult for him to survive. In the Great Thousand World, there were countless capable people. Even if he hid deep in the mountains, there would still be people who could find him. Zhou Xuanji saw that it was difficult for him to accept, and sent a telepathic message again. How about becoming a sword attendant instead of a sword slave? Shi Shinzong was speechless and couldn't help but reply. Is there a difference? Zhou Xuanji replied. To make you feel better. Shi Shinzong fell silent. The Hegemon Sword Emperor, who was currently fighting, felt incredibly anxious. Zhou Xuanji's sword was already at Shi Shinzong's throat, and he could take Shi Shinzong's life at any moment. Nangonglai asked as he cast the spell. Why isn't the little friend of the Divine Cliff making a move? Could it be that the Divine Cliff was not here to help him? Was it just an act? Lan Xiangying didn't reply, but she frowned slightly. Zhou Xuanji had just arrived and did not know the rules, but she understood. After all, Shi Shinzong was a 3rd-class great emperor. Seeing someone with greater talent, he would probably feel unbalanced and want to bully Shi Shinzong. The battle continued. Zhou Xuanji and Yi Zichen seemed to be in another world. They did not move and communicated telepathically. Shi Shinzong found it a bit difficult to endure Su Chen's words, and his heart started to soften. After a while, Shi Shinzong looked up at the Hegemon Sword Emperor and faintly sighed as he sent a voice transmission. Forget it, I will follow you. I can be used by you, but I cannot be a sword slave. Zhou Xuanji smiled. I was afraid that you wouldn't be worried. He would first trick Shi Shinzong over, then slowly make him submit. And so, Zhou Xuanji sheathed his sword and left. Shi Shinzong followed closely behind. The Hegemon Sword Emperor widened his eyes and hurriedly shouted, Shi Shinzong, where are you going? Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji was delighted. No wonder Shi Shinzong had been moved. That fellow didn't even call him master anymore. He was simply too disgraceful. Shi Shinzong turned around and said, Apologies, from today onwards, I will follow him. His name is Ji Xian, and his talent in the way of the sword is greater than mine. The Hegemon Sword Emperor nearly vomited blood. What the hell? He had not expected this turn of events at all. If you are in trouble in the future, I will definitely do my best to repay you for your decades of support. Shi Shinzong said calmly. After thinking about it, he and the Hegemon Sword Emperor did not owe each other anything. Back in the northern wilderness region, if not for him, the Hegemon Sword Emperor would have died long ago. Now, because of the difference in their realms, the Hegemon Sword Emperor treated him as an equal, and he already had a knot in his heart. The Hegemon Sword Emperor's face instantly darkened. Lan Xiangying and Nangong Lai also looked at Zhou Xuanji in confusion. What did this brat say to change Shi Shinzong's attitude? They had some understanding of Shi Shinzong. He would rather die than submit. Back then, if it wasn't for the Hegemon Sword Emperor saving him, he most likely would have died outside the Heavenly Palace. Zhou Xuanji brought Shi Shinzong and quickly left. Lan Xiangying also left the battlefield and turned into a ray of sword light as she chased after Zhou Xuanji. Nangong Lai and the Hegemon Sword Emperor stopped as well. The Hegemon Sword Emperor's face was dark, and he did not say anything. Nor did he chase after Zhou Xuanji and Shi Shinzong. His heart was filled with unprecedented grievance. He really wanted to explode, but he didn't know who to explode at. To Zhou Xuanji, Lan Xiangying would definitely help. Ask Shi Shinzong? Then he would really be branded as a traitor. Nangong Lai smiled and said, Hegemon Sword Emperor, this is truly a cause for celebration. See you next time. He turned around and left quickly. The golden immortals he brought with him also retreated. The Hegemon Sword Emperor floated in the air and forcefully suppressed his anger. He was thinking. He racked his brains to think. Why had Shi Shinzong betrayed him? Was it because the divine cliff was too strong? Or was he bewitched by that disciple of the divine cliff? Dozens of sword shio flew over from all directions. Every one of them was covered in blood and looked very dispirited. In this battle, they had lost miserably and had even become a laughingstock. They hated Shi Shinzong to the core, but they didn't dare to say anything. The other side, Zhou Xuanji and Shi Shinzong flew at full speed, and Lan Xiangying quickly caught up to them. She flew over to Zhou Xuanji and asked, How did you convince him? Zhou Xuanji chuckled and said, He and I are old friends. Lan Xiangying suddenly understood. Shi Shinzong came from the northern wilderness region. Didn't that mean that Zhou Xuanji was also from the northern wilderness region? The Sword Dao Great Emperor of the northern wilderness region. Her pupil shrank, as if she had thought of something. Her body trembled slightly, but she didn't say anything. Zhou Xuanji, Xuanji, Ji Xian, waves of shock surged in her heart. Zhou Xuanji's name shook the Center God province, and he was known as the most powerful genius in the mortal realm. He was ranked 12th on the Great Emperor Stele. In terms of talent, he was definitely the most talented cultivator in the past 100,000 years. No wonder Shi Shinzong became his disciple. Zhou Xuanji turned to look at Shi Shinzong and said, From today onwards, you will follow me to the Divine Cliff. You will stay in my residence, and we can exchange insights in the sword's way anytime. To intimidate Shi Shinzong, he condensed 9 sword souls straight away. Shi Shinzong was tongue-tied, and he looked as if he had seen a ghost. He could only condense 1 sword soul, and he had to accumulate power. Zhou Xuanji could condense 9 sword souls at will. How could he not be shocked? His eyes were burning with passion. He wanted to learn such a skill. Lan Xiangying did not speak, but she was also stunned by Zhou Xuanji. She knew about sword souls because she also cultivated sword techniques. Her impression of Zhou Xuanji changed completely, and she was filled with interest in him. A day passed. The Hegemon Sword Emperor did not catch up to them. He had most likely given up. However, they were stopped by another person. It was the old beggar and Di Guanlong. The old beggar looked at Zhou Xuanji and chuckled as he said, Brat, I like you. Take me as your teacher. Di Guanlong frowned and looked at Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji asked with narrowed eyes, Who are you, sir? Lan Xiangying drew her sword and was prepared to fight. Before they set off for the mission, Han Shuzi had instructed her to bring Zhou Xuanji back alive. Who I am is not important. What's important is that by following me, you can reach the heights of the divine cliffs, Han Shuzi. The old beggar said proudly. He placed his hands on his waist, looking as cocky as he could be. Before Zhou Xuanji could speak, Lan Xiangying was already furious. She said coldly, Sir, why are you looking down on the divine cliff? Di Guanlong snorted and said, So what if it's the Divine Cliff? We're going to the Divine Cliff to kill Han Shuzi. I advise you not to go back. The Divine Cliff will be destroyed by me. Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji and the others' expressions changed. Who was Han Shuzi? He was the lord of the Divine Cliff, a powerhouse of the Center God province. Back then, even Devil Emperor Dugu was not a match for him. This person's tone was arrogant. He said that he was going to kill Han Shuzi. Di Guanlong grabbed the old beggar's shoulder and snorted. Don't waste your breath with them. Kill Han Shuzi first. You only know how to waste time. As he spoke, he pulled the old beggar away. The old beggar could not resist at all and said to Zhou Xuanji, Brat, wait for me. I'm the destined master. If you miss me, you will regret it. His voice became more and more distant, and soon, he and Di Guanlong disappeared over the horizon. They were heading towards the Divine Cliff. Wonderful Book House. You're tuning in to the Li Mei Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.